We have a full council. We have Ben Shakespeare, Lena Mathis, Benny Drake, and Wendell Gubler. We're thankful they're all here. We are streaming this online, and the link is available on our website if anyone wants to watch it that way. And then we do have overflow seating as well available, and should have a screen in there so people can watch that same stream. I do want to note that if you want to speak on anything that's on the agenda, we do have a procedure for that, and it's to fill out one of these yellow papers. So make sure you do that if you do want to speak on anything on the agenda, so I can call on you when that time comes. Okay, but we'll start with an opening ceremony. I'll do the Pledge of Allegiance and then the opening comments. Would everyone please rise? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our dear Heavenly Father, we're very grateful for this chance we have to meet as a community tonight. We're so grateful for the wonderful air we have to live in, the good weather we've been having lately, and for the progress that's been made with COVID in our nation. We ask for a blessing of those in our community that are suffering from any illnesses, and especially pray for that guidance in this meeting tonight. Again, we're so thankful for all we have, and say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Okay, so item number 3 is communications and appearances. That would be if anyone has a yellow paper that's for something not on the agenda. Did anyone turn in a paper that was for something not on the agenda? Okay, very good. All right, item number 4 is conflicts and disclosures. Council, does anyone need to disclose anything on any of the agenda items tonight? Okay, very good. All right, we'll move into our working agenda. Item number 5, we have our consent agenda, 5A, which is approval of claims and minutes, our October 28th, 2020 regular city council meeting minutes, and our November 4th, 2020 works meeting minutes. We also have our calendar of events. Item number 2, our meeting on November 25th is canceled. The 26th is Thanksgiving Day, and then the 26th and 27th of November, the offices will be closed. And then we'll have our next work meeting on December 20th, or excuse me, December 2nd, 2020. And then we also have on the consent agenda, the Desert Village Townhomes Phase 1 final plat approval. So council, do you want to take any of these items individually or approve the consent agenda? What would you like to do?
I would make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
I would like to have the Desert Village Townhomes final plat.
Okay.
Okay, do you want to amend your motion?
I'll amend it. I'll amend that we approve the consent agenda, with the exception of item 3.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Ben and a second by Lena. This is a money item, so we'll go roll call. We'll start with Wendell.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. Very good. All right, so let's move on to item number 3, our Desert Village Townhomes Phase 1 final plat approval. Would you like to cover this, Bob?
Okay. This is in a PD residential zone. It is just across the street east from Laver Ridge Intermediate School. This originally came to the city, as you recall, maybe a year and a half ago under D.R. Horton. Builders were going to put a project in. They got their PDR zone amendment and submitted a preliminary plat. Anyway, they decided not to pursue it. So it sat idle for some period of time. And then Cole West stepped up and said they wanted to do basically the same project. So if you remember, Drake Howell, the representative, came to the Planning Commission and City Council for the amended planned development residential zone again, even after Cole West, because even though Cole West has the very same site plan, same number of units, which and the acre is 17.18 acres for the total project. This is how phase 1, 3 acres. and has 64 units in this phase. Trying to think the entire project. Let's see, I'm not seeing that. But anyway, they came to this Planning Commission City Council with an amended plan development residential zone showing the new elevation drawings. If you recall, the Drake Hal went through and kind of, we talked about the difference between the housing plans that D.R. Horton had submitted and what Cole West proposing to do. So anyway, the council approved that amended PDR zone. They are now at the phase of the final plat, 64 two-story townhome units. There's 28 buildings on the 6.3 acre phase 1 site. Brock, do you have the plat on that? I don't know if that's should be there. This was to the Planning Commission last week.
It's page 46. Do you want to skip real quick? There we go.
So all the streets in the project are public streets, even though if you look along Rachel Drive, which is the left side of the exhibit, those units will effectively have two fronts. Along Rachel Drive, it will appear they front Rachel Drive, but the entrance is from the interior public street. And they all have 2-car garages. These are all 2-story units. Planning Commission recommends approval of the phase 1 final plat. I don't know if you have other questions for me. I'd try and answer that.
Council? Okay, then I would entertain a motion on this item.
I'll move that we approve Desert Village Townhomes Phase 1 final plat.
Second.
Okay, a motion by Elena and a second by Ben. Any question on that motion? Okay, we'll do roll calls to be safe. We'll start with Ben.
Aye.
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 Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you, council. All right, we'll move on to our general business, item B1, which is consider a zone change request from residential R110 and residential agricultural to planned development residential on 5.43 acres generally located east of Gates Lane and south of Santa Clara Drive. The rezone, along with the requested conditional use permit, would allow for a proposed assisted living facility and approve ordinance 2020-15. The applicant is Kyle Hafen, Patrick Mannion, and Anthony Jeffers. And we'll have this presented first by Bob. And then I wanted to note that Corey isn't here as well because of a potential COVID issue. And so he is on us with the Zoom call, I believe. Is he on there? I can't see that from here.
I have not seen Corey join in yet.
Okay, if we do have any questions, hopefully he can join us via Zoom, but we'll go to Bob at this point.
Okay. Okay, this is a zone change request from residential R110 and residential agricultural to planned development residential on 5.43 acres, generally located between Santa Clara Drive and the Santa Clara River and east of Gates Lane. This basic project came before the city council some months ago. And at that point, they were asking for, first of all, a general plan amendment. Council denied that. They have come back. They have shifted the project to the west. So they now are up to Gates Lane and actually right at the corner of Gates Lane and Santa Clara Drive. And we'll show some site plan here. Anyway, the zone change is for the purpose of allowing an assisted living facility, which has 3 components. It has 50 units of independent living. These are seniors only, senior independent. 40 assisted living units, or seniors that require some degree of nursing assistants, and a 20-bed memory care unit. So these three components combined to make this one project. In total, there are 110 proposed units. There's both one-story components and two-story buildings for the assisted living. They're also proposing about 3,000 to 5,000 square feet of neighborhood commercial space right along Santa Clara Drive, right near the intersection with Gates Lane. So it'd be just east of Gates Lane along Santa Clara Drive. And we have some renderings of what that building would look like, and also part of the site plan. They also would like to have underneath the commercial space that fronts on Santa Clara Drive, the lower level, because there's a grade change. A walkout assisted living units would be located underneath the retail space. That would be at ground level from Benelli Drive. So the city general plan land use map, copy on the rear wall, we've looked at it, designates this corner as mixed-use residential, which is a land use designation in the general plan for a variety of housing types, townhomes, multifamily, and also neighborhood commercial uses such as small retail stores and offices. So the proposed project fits within the guidelines for the mixed-use residential land designation. Also in the general plan is one of the objectives stated, it's on page 57, says one of the goals is to increase the variety of housing types within new neighborhoods to accommodate a wider range of lifestyles and housing needs. So right now, as I understand, Santa Clara doesn't have an assisted living facility. So this facility would service some of the life cycle needs of residents as we age. And this would be able to keep some of the Santa Clara residents here in Santa Clara. A portion of the property is within the historic district, approximately 1.7, maybe just under 2 acres is within the historic district. The Heritage Commission has reviewed this twice. They looked at the previous plan that came months ago. And they felt good about that, recommended approval. And then they reviewed this again last week. Last Thursday, the Heritage Commission looked at the site plan and the building elevation drawings, which primarily is the commercial along Santa Clara Drive. But they also looked at the design for the memory care and others buildings, because a portion of it, again, about half the site, just less than half the site is within the historic district. Anyway, the historic district did pass a motion to recommend approval for the project and the elevation drawings to the Planning Commission and City Council. The architecture, the applicants will go into the architecture of the project. Basically, it's proposed to match some of the historic flavor of the Santa Clara Historic District. And we can look at those elevation drawings in a minute. A little bit about traffic. People in the memory care units don't drive. Assisted living effectively don't drive, but the staff and the visitors will make up the trip generation for those units. Those people living in the independent living are projected under what they call the ITE, Institute for Traffic Engineers. Their trip generation manuals projects or estimates that the 3.7 trips for each independent living unit. So in total, if you take all these different components and multiply by the unit by the trip, it comes out to about 300 trips a day. However, what I've realized in talking to the applicants is that their staff, 30 staff, will basically serve all of these different components. So if we use the ITE manual, there's a little bit of a double counting because in the memory care, they assume 2 visitors or staff per bed, and then 2.6 in the assisted living. In their case, their staff will take care of all these different components. So it's good. I think they estimate somewhere around 250 trips, between 250 and 300. It's very similar, and their numbers are probably accurate. Parking requirements. If you look at the city parking requirements, it falls under nursing homes, which under the city code is 4 spaces plus 1 space for each 3 beds, based on 60 beds for the assisted living and the memory care. That comes out to 24 spaces. The senior living, independent living, our code doesn't have a specific listing for independent living, but the information or the planning magazine's ITE would estimate somewhere between 1.3 to 1.5 parking spaces per unit, which then comes to somewhere between 65, 75 total parking spaces for the 50 senior independent living units. Add the independent living units with the memory care and the assisted, you have a total parking requirement of somewhere between 89 and 99. The applicant shows 95 spaces on their site plan, plus somewhere between 10 and 15 proposed parallel or angle parking along the future Benelli Drive. So I think their total parking of somewhere 105 or more spaces would be adequate. Planning Commission did specifically recommend that that would be an adequate number. The Planning Commission did grant the conditional use permit for the assisted living and the mixed use, the commercial component, and that approval is subject, of course, to the zone change tonight. So, the Planning Commission recommendation, the Planning Commission heard from many residents during the public hearing on November 12th, last Thursday. Planning Commission spent approximately 2.5 hours listening to public comments and also discussing the project among themselves. Most of the public comments at that point were opposed to the project for a variety of reasons, including traffic, size of the buildings, and just a desire to have the property remain zoned for single-family homes. However, there were some residents who expressed support for the project, feeling that it would provide a beneficial service for those elderly persons who need these services. The Planning Commission voted 3 in favor, 2 opposed to the rezone request and the accompanying project plan. Their approval also included the proposed parking plan, which was part of the site plan. So I'd ask at this point, since we haven't gone through the elevations, the applicant to show the slides and we can talk about the proposed building designs.
Bob, are you wanting just to see the slides first and continue on, or are you wanting us to? Okay. Kyle Hafen, applicant. Just a little bit of info maybe to start. You know, with the last meeting that we held with City Council, we were looking for a general plan change, and obviously we met with a lot of opposition, a lot of comments, a lot of concerns from staff, council members, city staff, from residents as well. And, you know, we went back to the drawing board and thought a lot about if this is a project we want to try and pursue. And personally, for myself, I am very passionate about what I believe this will do for the city of Santa Clara. And so we decided to start over, so to speak, and address some of the major concerns which we felt and heard were that of traffic, the transition between residential homes and the assisted living facility itself, the massing of the buildings, specifically right behind other existing homes. Those were kind of the main things that we heard. And so, as you'll notice, not just in the renderings, but in our new site plan, we have removed the buildings from any, where we can, from any existing directly in back of somebody's property line to create more space. We've added a lot more landscaping to try and create natural buffers, as well as move the entire site plan to the west. And specifically with the Levitt family and Farron Levitt family and the Grand Hafen family, those others who live on Quell Street. We've eliminated any of this facility and shifted it to the west. There's natural topography that this project actually sits down in. Bob mentioned that there's an elevation change from Santa Clara Drive down to Bonelli. And there's also a shift and change between the Quell Street Plateau and where this project is, as well as 10 to 12 feet. So this kind of anchors itself down into this little nook, and we think maintains more of that natural separation between the residential homes and what we're proposing. Traffic is something that was obviously a concern. There's not a whole lot of things that we could do, but what we did do, we did offer. And we offered to give the city an additional 12 feet of frontage on Santa Clara Drive to utilize as either a merge lane, a turn lane. I think we're all convinced at some point maybe a traffic light will be on Gates Lane and Santa Clara Drive. So that's something that we can do to try and help that. The other thing that we committed to doing was making sure that our shift changes for those who would be operating and working at the facility, that they wouldn't fall into the general timeframes of everybody else's, say, 9 to 5, that we could make accommodating shift changes to try and help decrease the traffic. The elevations and the renderings, we spent a lot of time trying to make those feel, we reference the Jacob Hamlin home a lot to try and articulate some of the design elements that it had specifically on Santa Clara Drive. Made the Santa Clara elevation that of close to 1.5 stories, maybe 2 stories, so that it would not just sit back because of the additional lane or merge lane, but be removed from off of the main street a little bit more to not feel so overbearing for those residents who are close by. So we really did try to listen and make those changes that we feel were most concerning to the residents and to staff. And in doing so, we recognize and realize that I think we have a better plan now, one that fits better into the area. We've had a lot of opportunity in the last 4 or 5 days to visit with additional residents. We held an additional open Zoom meeting and have spent a lot of time visiting with individuals and talking through some of their concerns and helping to make sure that what we were intending to build and our design and plan was what they were hearing. And to our discredit and our fault, we had misconveyed or didn't convey properly a lot of what our true intent was and the way in which we wanted it to be a final project. Through those conversations, I think that we've been able to have a better understanding and that the residents are maybe not in favor of, but understand and could even be supportive of the vision and what we're trying to do. And with that, we'll go through the presentation.
Good evening, members of City Council. We're grateful to be here this evening. We're grateful for the process that is in place and the steps and the checks and balances in this process that have led us to be here tonight. We're thankful for compliance with the ordinances and the requirements and guidelines that the Heritage Commission as well as the Planning Commission reviewed, questioned, and approved and presented us to be here to present this to you this evening. With that being said, this particular rendering and the images that we're showing tonight are not engineered. They are just simply artistic renderings to show what our intent is. But as stated, there are additional steps in this process that we will comply with after tonight's meeting that will refine this as part of the process as we go to obtain permit. But the images that we're presenting tonight do show our intent of what we plan to develop and what we plan to build. This particular elevation is the south elevation. Is there a way that we can minimize the participants on the right-hand side? Just so that we don't, there we go, thank you. So this particular elevation is the elevation that looks due south onto Benelli and onto the Santa Clara River and over to the Sycamores. This particular elevation is different than the one that we had previously submitted because again, we wanted to focus more on the architectural feel and theme of the pioneer heritage here within Santa Clara City. So when you look at the color palette, the materials, and the architecture of this rendering, we feel like it is actually in more alignment than the previous elevations that we have shown. It also shows the landscaping. It shows the breaks in the roof line and the overall elevation. What you see in the middle there is the actual porte-cochere where the drop-off area is. Where we're currently standing is actually on Benelli, looking at the actual drive semicircle that comes into the property. And you'll actually, I'll note that when we get to the site plan, so you'll know the point of reference from which we are speaking. The reason that we are here tonight is for a zoning designation request in alignment with the current zoning plan. This particular image in this graphic shows the site as it relates to the surrounding zoning and also shows the heritage piece up on the northern portion of the site. So the red boundary line shows the proposed property that we are here for tonight, and everything in green is the current zoning, and this map was taken off of the city's website. The request tonight is for a planned development residential to support a senior living facility. In our previous submittal, there were a lot of comments that came from residents as well as from staff about the importance for us to communicate with the neighbors. We took that to heart, and what we did prior to the Heritage Commission and continued to do between the Heritage Commission and Planning Commission, as well as between the Planning Commission and tonight's City Council meeting, is reach out and communicate with the neighbors. So what we did is, again, the red outline on this map shows our proposed site. The green highlighted area is an area that we chose that we felt were the immediate neighbors. There are roughly 54 homes and businesses within that area, and we printed out a flyer. We took those flyers to those places of residence as well as business. Some people were not home, so we rubber banded the flyer and left it on the door. And then a couple of days later, we actually did go back and try to reconnect with those people. Likewise, we came here to the City Hall and we hand delivered flyers for city council members and for city staff. In talking with people face to face, and this was actually a slide that we had for the Heritage Commission at that time. These numbers have changed since then. But prior to the Heritage Committee, we had 5 people that were in support. 45 people within the green area said they really didn't care one way or the other, and 7 that stated that they would be opposed to the project. In total, we distributed 60 flyers that were actually hand delivered. Since that time, since the Heritage Committee, we have held Zoom meetings, we've held face-to-face meetings, and we've also held meetings out on the site, again, to present what our intent is and to receive feedback from the neighbors to make sure that we are in understanding of each other of what our proposal is and what their concerns are. This particular slide shows the topography challenge that Kyle had mentioned, and the specific issue or challenge is with the topography right along Santa Clara Drive, because where the orange building is there, that's kind of shaped like a C, there's about a 12 to 14 foot drop there, and trying to figure out how do we go develop something as a developer and a builder when you have that topography change but also make it aesthetically pleasing from Santa Clara Drive. And so it does create some challenge. And so as Bob mentioned in his report, what we are proposing is that we would have a single-story building from the Santa Clara Drive view. So as you're driving down Santa Clara Drive, you would see a single-story building, which would be our proposed commercial retail area. And then on the south side, it would basically be a walkout assisted living side that would be in alignment with the grade change in the elevation from Benelli. So if you're walking down Benelli Drive, or if you're driving and you look to the north or to your left, you would see a two-story building. The first floor would actually be the assisted living. The top floor would be the retail commercial space. So I wanted to make sure that was clear. This site plan, again, is different than the one that you had previously seen. You'll notice the property to the right or to the east, which aligns up along with Quail Street. Because of the comments and the feedback that we received from the neighbors as well as city staff, we took those comments to heart and evaluated them and decided that we feel like what we heard was that it would actually be a better use and create less concern for the neighbors if we were to do this plan in lieu of our previous plan. It would be more conducive to some of the sentiments and comments. So with that, you'll notice that we have the main entrance to the property now comes off of Gates Lane onto Benelli. We do have the parking spaces, of which Bob spoke to, right there to the left or to the north of Benelli. Those parking spaces are specifically there to serve the proposed commercial space because we cannot put them on Santa Clara Drive, and it's not conducive to put them on Gates Lane. And so again, the ordinance allows us to put them behind the proposed space, and that's what we've done for safety reasons and for traffic flow, is to create those spaces along Benelli. What we're also proposing then is to create ADA compliant walkways from those parking spaces along the west side of the building, including a ramp and steps that could safely get people up to the proposed commercial space along Santa Clara Drive. Likewise, you'll notice that with this particular plan that we have all of the parking on site on our property, and we're trying to shield it or create a buffer with the building so those from the Sycamores, when they look to the north from their homes, they're going to see the rendering that we showed on the first slide, which that rendering represents the assisted living, the commons, and the independent living squares that you see there next to the light green porte-cochere, which is what we were looking at from that first rendering. But we've put all the parking within the site so that we can then shield it with the buildings. Likewise, as you look at the perimeter of the property, we tried to remove buildings away from the property lines so that we didn't obstruct views from the previous plan, and try to create more open space because those are some of the comments that we heard from the last meeting, and we feel like we've done everything we can to help accommodate those concerns and those comments. Again, as noted, we've actually reduced the number of units by 10 because, again, the concerns and comments from the last round of meetings and the neighbors' comments. So we, as stated, we have 20 memory care. We reduced the number of assisted living units from 50 down to 40, and then maintained the 50 independent living. That has stayed the same for a total of 120 units. I do want to go back to this slide just for a minute. If you look at this site plan, you'll notice, and I'm going to start from the left and work our way to the right. The gray rectangular box along Santa Clara Drive is the proposed commercial that we are talking about. I want to make sure that it's clear what we're trying to do here and what our intent is to create a hair salon or a barber shop, an ice cream parlor, a small bakery, possibly a flower shop. These will not be any national chains. We feel like this will actually be a great enhancement to Santa Clara Drive and the residents of Santa Clara City. Likewise, we think it provides some great services for those who physically live on the property, that they can walk from their unit to this proposed commercial space, again, thus reducing the number of trip counts and traffic that has been such a concern. As you look at the building adjacent to it, which would be the tan or the light brown C-shaped building, that would be the actual assisted living. And the logic and the reasoning behind that is because it would make it easier for those residents to patronize the commercial rather than having to walk across the site with a walker or something like that, or with assistance. It actually creates a great benefit to them to have commercial space very close to their units. In the middle, we have the main commons, which is the drop-off area, which will have the kitchen, the dining area, administrative staff, things of that nature, laundry, and things of that nature. And then we would have assisted living supported on the left, which would be the west side. That rectangle box that you see out surrounded by grass is actually a covered patio area to create an open outdoor space that's surrounded by landscape. And then if you look at the brown box on the left of the commons building, that would be independent living. And then we have the 2 independent living buildings out on the east property line to support those 50 units. The logic and the reasoning behind that from an operator standpoint is there are some independent living people that still want to be close where all the action is as part of the commons. So most likely those residents would actually want to stay in the independent living building that's attached to the commons. Whereas we will likewise have some that are more independent and want to have that independence and want to live a little bit further away. Therefore, we've created those 2 buildings on that east property line to accommodate that demand and that need for those who would be looking for independent living. Again, extensive landscape area, making sure that the buildings in compliance with the city ordinance, with the proper 20-foot setback, the 10-foot setbacks on the sides, all of that is accounted for in this proposed plan that you see here, as well as the 12-foot additional space along Santa Clara Drive for a merge lane onto traffic onto Santa Clara Drive. So we'll wrap up here, and I just want to go through the renderings again so that as we conclude that everyone can see and understand what our intent is. And again, because of the process that we're in right now for the city council meeting does not require engineered drawings, but does require us to submit something. It's highly suggested that we submit something that shows what our intent is, and that's what we're trying to comply with tonight. So again, this rendering, we're standing on Benelli, and we're looking basically northeast to the middle of the Commons building, which is the building that has the dormers on it. And then you have the assisted living to the left and the independent living to the right. And then this little drop-off area with a landscape buffer right there that would create a landscape buffer between the property and Benelli, and those that live in the Sycamores, as they look north, this is what they would see. This is what our intent is. Likewise, we wanted to provide a rendering that shows what our intent, our proposed intent is to do along Santa Clara Drive. This is a single-story building. We do have a requirement that we cannot build over 35 feet, but we also have to address the 12-foot grade drop-off here that we have to go deal with. So what we're proposing is to create this to where it's an extension of the retail for Santa Clara City, and provide some opportunity for smaller businesses and for smaller patrons to be able to come in here and provide some of that service, and then also provide them for the senior living facility. Additionally, again, the walkway there in front of this, we would create that space to make sure that it is wide enough to accommodate for those that may need assistance of a cane, those that may need assistance of a walker, to be able to access this along with pedestrians that don't need that assistance. But again, trying to create vibrancy and a cohesion for what we believe are some of the needs and demands for Santa Clara City. This rendering is for architectural purposes only, not for color. So if you are offended by the color, I apologize. But again, what you're approving tonight is not the color palette, you're approving the intent. So what this is the thought process for those 2 independent living buildings that are on the east side. And the reason for that is because of the comments that we received from the neighbors about having a more residential look and feel to the property. So we feel like this addresses that and addresses that concern by creating it more of an actual residential looking, feeling type of a building for those who are in the independent living space. And again, this would only be for the 2 buildings that are along the east property line that we discussed earlier to address independent living. Again, back to this is the main building, which again is where the Commons building is, where we have the support for the assisted living to the left and the independent living to the right. And this is what we propose. So with that, we will now open it up for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Bob and applicants. So at this point, I would love to get some feedback from the council, see if you have any questions for the developers. And then maybe once we have a discussion, then we'll move to the comments from the public. Anybody want to start?
I'll start. I'll break the ice. First off, great presentation. Very easy to understand. Again, elevations, I get on all of that. But so to be clear, the assisted living, the common, the independent, you've got 2-story in the independent behind, but in front, the part that faces Benelli, well, this looks 2-story. So the common area and the assisted on the left, which would, if you're looking at it from the Benelli side, and the independent on the right, all of that will be 2-story.
Right?
Okay. The memory care is single-story?
Memory care, most likely, the answer would be yes. There's a number of 20 units for memory care, and we haven't gone through an intense architectural design. We've used space utilization. Obviously, if we can keep it 1-story, it's cost effective for us, and it makes sense to do 1-story in memory care. But it's hard to define that until we get further on down. The same concept with the memory care facility site, it actually sits down 10, 12, 14, 15 feet lower than the existing elevations around it. So even if it was a 2-story building, it would appear as a 1-story building from Santa Clara Drive, or maybe even a 1/2-story building, because it does sit down a lot lower.
Okay. The assisted living, the commercial obviously is 2-story from the Benelli side, but the assisted living, the C-shaped area on the site plan, that's all single level. You've got some that are labeled 2-story and then others that aren't, and
So the commercial off of Santa Clara will be 1.5 stories, maybe 2-story there. There will need to be a transition. As you come down Gates Lane, right there specifically, there will be a transition. And that side hill actually is the same until you get down, let's say, to the 3rd tree on the, going from Santa Clara Drive down. The elevation has that gradual grade to it. So as you come down Gates Lane, you will be visualizing one that'll be shielded by landscaping, but you won't see a full facade there because the majority of the building's still tucked away into it will be buried like a walkout basement. So as you transition down, it will appear as we're going from Santa Clara Drive of say 2 stories, and then getting down to Benelli of 2-story. So there'll be a transition there with the buildings and the grade as we come back down to the 2-story off of Benelli. But there won't be, the only thing that will look and or possibly feel like a 3-story would be the interior of that courtyard. If you're at ground level and anything that was that direct elevation. So on the interior of the courtyard, if you were standing there, you could look at something that might appear a little bit larger, but that would be shielded by being inside. That make sense?
the interior of that courtyard, looking back toward the commercial piece. Is
Correct.
that- Okay. Yep.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It does, walking this property, and again, my concern from the first time around was when you get up on to the east, getting up on that upper level, I mean, this does integrate very well into that lower terrain, into that, I mean, it's significantly lower in that area. So it does. You had them labeled as 2-story, and I just wanted to be clear what the neighbors around would be. I'm looking at 4 residences that are directly impacted right there, and just.
Yeah, I think it's really important to note too, we indicate that this is our intent. And the reason why we say that is because if we say this is exactly what we're building and then a window's different, then we leave ourselves open for comment, right? We will build something very, very, very similar to this. If we could build this very close exactly, we would do that. So it is our intent, but until we get further down the process, we don't know that. Now, just for side note as well, some of the feedback that we've had recently with the residents has been a concern for the architectural design and elements. We have opened it up to say we would love to have an architectural review committee, and we would be fine if that was part of the approval process, indicating that this would need to be formed, and we'd have to, there's individuals who I think have almost volunteered to participate and be a part of that concept to make sure that these concepts are what we are going to do.
I think also it's good to note too, for residents who might be listening in, that even if you approve this tonight, that there's still a process we have to go through with the Heritage Commission, with Planning Commission, and coming back to you again, to City Council, as this evolves and as we go through the actual architectural and engineering design of the project. Tonight, we're just simply showing you what we are planning to do and what the intent is, knowing full well that even upon approval tonight, there's still an extensive process we have to go through to make sure that we stay in compliant with what we're proposing.
And there was a lot said about the elevations via email and things like that. I understand. It'd be one thing if the zoning allowed this, understanding you're going to go put the expense and that into elevations. We're dealing with zone change, as well. So again, I agree with all of that. I think any approval would require you to come back with full elevations and seek those approvals.
Well, one of the disconnects that we take responsibility for was some of the images that we've shown and displayed have been, from our purpose, just to show the architectural design elements. But this example is perfect. The image on the screen was a 3-story facade from Santa Clara Drive, and that was ingrained into the residents. I understand why. We never intended to build 3 stories there. It was always going to be a 1.5 story, something that, as you can see, maybe gives us a chance to have a walkability through those rafters and connect that C-shaped building. But because we showed those things, it created some ideas of what was going to be built. So that's why we've adjusted, changed, and removed them so that you can see more of exactly what it is we plan to build.
And as a comment to the council, if in fact we were simply dealing with the commercial aspect or the corner piece there, it could be approved as significantly higher than the 1.5 stories. So it's, again, from that side, I do like the site integration. I like the lower elevation. So that's all I have.
I got a question. At our last meeting, you came to us for a general plan amendment, and we denied that. And basically what you're doing now is doing the same thing with a zone change, right?
The general plan amendment was to take the Quail parcel, which is about 3 acres, and include that into our plan development, into the PDR residential, which is what we're requesting. But we've not incorporated any part of that general plan and moved the property to the west. We're done with about 5.5 acres there, where the general plan, the majority of that parcel is in line with the mixed-use residential, whereas Quail didn't have any mixed-use
But
residential.
you're asking for mixed-use residential and getting rid of the R110 and getting rid of the agricultural, right?
I'm sorry, say your question again.
You're asking to get rid of the R110
Mhm.
and the agricultural.
Right. So the general plan,
And that would go to a mixed-use residential,
correct.
which is not what the general plan asked for.
So
Can I help maybe on this one? Last time, if you remember, they had a 2 acres on the corner of Gates Lane and Santa Clara Drive. They said that's future commercial.
Right, I understand.
Remember that?
And
Well,
that's-
now they have shifted this project into that area.
I
So
understand.
when they shifted half of their project last time was in an area in the general plan designated as very low density residential, very low. So they've shifted the project out of that into this bubble that's on the corner that says mixed-use residential. So I don't know, does that make sense? What they've done is they've shifted the project to the west on a portion which last time they were here, they said, no, that's future commercial. And, you know, we really didn't get into it. Well, now that area, that future commercial is part of this plan. So they're 90% of that site plan is in an area that's on the general plan designated as mixed-use residential.
Now, I understand that we're only dealing with 5.43 acres, right?
Yes,
And 2 acres is the commercial side.
that has now been incorporated. The 2 acres was right up here in the corner with,
Right, I
Makes
understand
sense.
where it's
So-
at. So
yeah,
that's
so-
been
so-
incorporated. There's
Well-
still 3.43 acres that falls back into the residential R110, correct?
there's a portion that's currently, a little piece is presently zoned R110, which is right on the corner there of Santa Clara Drive and Gates Lane.
3 or 5.
The bulk of it is zoned residential, agricultural, or RA.
Right, so
Yeah.
3.43 is either agricultural or R110.
Or the RA, yes, yes.
And in that zoning, it's a 2 dwellings per acre situation. So
Yeah.
we're talking about 20 units per acre versus 2 units per acre. Regardless of the 2 commercial mixed-use acres, you can convert that, but at the same time, when you came in originally, there was 6 point some odd acres you were putting together. And all of that was falling into that agricultural or residential zone. Now you're changing, taking 2 acres, putting it in the mixed use. You've got 3.4 acres that is still in that. And you're still not, in fact, you cut out 10 units, but you've also cut out an acre. So you're actually asking for more density than you had in the original plan. Is that correct?
I'm not exactly sure of the math. I think I understand your comment. If I don't, then we'll try again. So the concept behind what we're trying to do with this current plan is shift it into an area that is topography, that the elevation changes is tucked in and secluded kind of by itself. Some of the comments that we've talked with the residents, those who live close by and in the surrounding area, have been direct questions. Do you want to have a home on Santa Clara Drive? Would you build a house right there? No. Would you build a house on Gates Lane? No. Being on site and seeing some of the difficulties and the expense in building, meaning the riprap and the flood mitigation that's going to be required, would you want to put your own residential home here? I think most of them answered no. And in fact, I don't recall any of them answering yes. It's possible that when the general plan was first made, that this seemed to be open space or agricultural or residential to be its best fit. Clearly, with the growth and the direction and what's happened in the city and surrounding areas, that's probably not the case anymore. We could argue back and forth, difference of opinions on if it should or shouldn't be. This parcel is tucked away. It sits down next to not very many residential homes existing. Those that are existing are part of the historic district, which means that they could have a commercial use to them as well. So this transitional piece that at one time was looked to say this needs to be residential homes, I don't think that's the best use for it anymore. And I don't think I'm alone in that aspect. So regardless of the numbers of density, we could say, well, in the mixed use residential, there's, 4 acres of mixed use residential that we can get 12 units an acre. That's not really what the intent of what we're trying to do is. As I understand, it's still an issue and or a concern. But really is the residential agricultural R110 the best use for that specific area? And does it allow us by the general plan to change that type of zoning? And the answer is yes. For the ordinances, it falls under the guidelines to be able to say, hey, the general plan does not specify an exact line. If you look at the image that's up right now, the orange overlay that cuts through multiple parcels, cuts those parcels in half. It's used for general purposes. Right out of the general plan, it states it's for general purposes. It does not identify specific lines. So that's why we're here. We're here to ask for that zone change because it fits that specific area.
in your opinion.
Sure.
But my question still is, we didn't decrease by eliminating 10 units. You didn't decrease the density. You actually eliminated acreage and increased the density from 18 to 20 units.
We eliminated, that's correct. And we also eliminated areas on Quail Street that should be more residential. So by shifting it over to a space that is better accommodating, in our opinion, for what the zoning request is that we have. So yes, the number of units per acre could have increased, but we've put it in a better place.
Can I make-
I have one other question, if I could.
Go ahead, Wendell.
The area that you're talking about, especially that commercial area and the low area coming off of Quail Creek, or not Quail Creek, Gates Lane. Just the history of that, I was born here 76 years ago, and I spent the first 13 years of my life in Santa Clara. And I was in one of the homes just above the area you're talking about, kind of close to where you live, Kyle, I understand. And during that time, there were several times we had floods coming in the area. We had a chicken coop off the hill, and I know there were several times we had to go down and rescue our chickens because the floods actually came up to the berm that our house was built upon. And in the last 10 years, we've had floods that have come in. And part of the reason that's scooped out there is because of the floods. It's really a dangerous situation for me to see an assisted living place put in that area because I don't trust the water. The water scares you, especially the old timers that have lived in this area. They know what a flood can do. And you talked about riprap and so forth. Hopefully that would stop the floods from coming up into your facility. But I have some concern about floods in the area. And that's why that's scooped out, is because the floods came down through there and scooped the soil out of there.
Right.
So that's another concern I have, other than traffic is a major concern I have.
Right. So with regard to the flood zone, you're exactly right, Councilman, that it is an area of concern. We will obviously make sure that the engineering take place, that it's right and appropriate, that any mitigation that needs to happen in order for it to be, designed or labeled as safe is followed. The Army Corps of Engineers have gone through and with extensive data and research indicated areas of concern that are unbuildable. Obviously, we will not be building in any of those areas, and we'll comply with the engineering and public works here in the city to make sure that it is, deemed safe. But it does happen. This is the Santa Clara River, and it definitely has flooded and will.
Did you have something, Ben?
Could-
earlier?
I was going to make
Oh, okay.
here just one comment. When we think about density, it's a little difficult to make a direct translation between an assisted living and density and what we normally think of density in residential homes. I mean, often we think about homes, 3 or 4 per acre. But, for example, the memory care is a building with 20 bedrooms. Does 20 bedrooms translate to 20 dwelling units? No, I don't think so. It's kind of like thinking about a hospital. You've got a series of bedrooms with patients, and that's more what the memory care is, that these are 1 bedroom I don't think they have kitchens. No, they go to the common area for the kitchen. So they're really, it's a one bedroom, very small unit. So you can't make it, say 20 units in a memory care is 20 dwelling units. It's not a good translation. It might work better if you'd say 3 memory care units or 4 is more equal to a dwelling. That makes sense.
Well, it depends on what you're looking at. If you're talking traffic, those particular rooms are going to have visitors more so than your assisted living or your other living resource. So traffic-wise, those 20 rooms are going to be equal to or greater than a single-family home being on that site. So you have to look at all the sides of it. It's not just because it's one bedroom and it's an assisted, an independent living or whatever you want to call it, or the memory care. But still the actual flow and the cost to the city is all going to be relative to what goes in there. So to me, what we're talking about is density, and it is something that originally, when the citizens of Santa Clara depended and required us to go through a general plan, the reason that was low density is because that's what they wanted. Now, if the residents want to redo the general plan and we review the densities which were created in that general plan, I have no problems changing the idea, but to go from 2 units per acre, 20 units per acre, doesn't make, to me, common sense when we're dealing with the general plan issues that we're dealing with. And to me, I don't see really any change from this plan, other than it is more comprehensive than the plan we had before. And in fact, I see an increase in densities. And to me, the reason that I voted against it in the initial stage was because of the density concept. If I lived down there and my idea was that it was going to be 2 units per acre, I would be tickled pink. And then to have 20 units shoved in with the traffic and the issues that come with it, I would be up in arms. And
So Councilman Drake, you're referring to the traffic issue,
not just traffic, I'm talking about,
traffic and density.
yes,
So there's roughly 10 acres there. If we did 2 units an acre, that's 20 dwellings, right? The trip count for a residential home is 10 per unit.
right.
So that's 200 trip count. We're talking about a trip count of 250.
Well, it depends on who. The original plan that you presented said it was 3.5 units, 3.5 trips per unit. Now, all of a sudden, it's changed.
Because we decreased the number of units.
And so
We've decreased the number of units from down to
only by
110.
10 units. That's only, even if you go to 3, that's only 30 units.
Yeah, I'm just sharing the information that we're gathering from the
But at which time?
data. It's the same data.
Not the same that we were presented with the first time.
Well, the trip count, Councilman Drake, comes from what they call that trip generation manual produced by the Institute for Traffic Engineers. And so it breaks it down, and those are pretty good estimates. And one thing that, as we went through and estimated 300 trips for the entire project, that would probably assume that each component is independent and their staff is independent. We're here, their staff, 30 people, is serving the entire complex. I think if you take the ITE numbers and multiply by the 3 separate components, then you're double counting some of the staff. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if, I don't want to beat this thing to death, but I don't think 110 assisted living units is equal to 110 dwelling units.
And I think it does.
Okay, well, you know, if you were to say, look, think of it as a hospital, small hospital, there's 110 beds in single occupancy rooms. Does that translate in your mind to 100 houses, homes?
Transportation wise, absolutely. I go to the hospital when I had a mother in there. I was there every day, twice a day, in and out. So depends on what you think of as a bed. If it's just to sleep in, absolutely not. But if it's requiring other people to be there, absolutely true.
So on that, just a comment, the general plan overlay is obviously a soft line. It's not a hard line across there. If you pull out the orange right there and the yellow, if it was a hard line, the applicants would have every right in that orange and yellow to go multifamily, eight per acre,
Up to 12.
up to 12 per acre. That's not 12 dwelling units, that's 12 units. It could be up 2 and 3 bedroom units that we just approved phase one. Looking at that, and I'm just for data, because we're approximately, I'd say half, maybe not quite half, is already in that, just on that line. So if you're gonna do that math and say 2.5 acres of this is in that at 12 per acre, at 3 bedroom units, just strictly getting into room counts and things like that, where I would agree. I think I don't think it's fair to say we've got 112 dwelling units, we've got 112 rooms. Well, we could have 65 rooms in the orange today in multifamily, and as a council have very little to say about that because it would meet every bit of and we've approved it all over the city.
I know, and I believe we made mistakes doing that with spot zoning.
But it's not,
That's-
we've got federal mandates that require
Not true.
housing. We absolutely do. I sit in
Affordable
those
housing.
committee meetings. And so I just, again, I think when we get into that, strictly from my side, there have been some drastic changes made that sit in the lower elevated area. I mean, again, I think as we look at the general plan lay there, I don't think it's fair to say, well, we want you to follow that line that cuts those top 2 parcels. The bottom third of those parcels need to go into R110, and we need to, or RRA for half-acre lots. The top can be multifamily. The bottom has to be half-acre lots, and then you end up. We have to look at it as a general. I think I agree with comments made, but I don't agree that on the traffic. I just don't see how the traffic for this is going to be worse than a residential neighborhood. I watch our neighborhood all. I don't think it's that far off for traffic. Now, some of the other aspects maybe, but I don't see the traffic being an issue.
And I'm not talking traffic, I'm talking the number of people that will be there versus the number of people in a housing project, single-family dwellings.
This is right out of the general plan. To remain consistent with changing directions, the city may need to update the general plan. There are 2 kinds of amendments to the general plan, a minor and a major. A minor amendment reflects minor adjustments that do not change the plan's overall meaning and/or direction. They include adjustments required to adapt the general plan principles to specific conditions on the ground, property lines, compatibility, and adjacent uses, modest changes in those densities. That's what we're talking about, Councilman Shakespeare, is that the general plan is designed to say, you're going to have to adjust it. This is a bubble map. There are things that we're going to have to do as we move forward in building and whatever, planning and developing. And this is exactly what it's referring to as saying those general plans, that bubble can and should be able to adjust and follow those property lines. That's what we're asking for.
And that last sentence actually says what about minor adjustments?
It says modest changes in density.
Modest change.
Right.
2
So-
to 20 seems to me to be a major adjustment.
We can agree to disagree on that. That's okay.
All right, so I'd like to hear from Lena, if that's okay, and then I'll give my comments, and I still want to get to the citizens. so.
Well, coming from the planning commission, I'll give you my 2 cents on general plan and zoning because they're different. And then I have a question actually for the applicant. So my comment would be, there is a difference between general plan and zoning, obviously. The general plan, if you look at that map next to the clock, it is a bubble map. It's a high-level overview of what the intent of the city is. So we just need to realize that that's the only purpose. And actually, I pulled out my map so I could more clearly see it. And if I'm looking at the bubbles in a broad sense of the bubble term, I think this entire site plan that's been presented doesn't even fall in the very low density category on our general plan map. It's not even in that bubble. It's in the RA bubble and the mixed use residential bubble. So when we're talking very low density, just don't even go there because it's not included in that. Secondly, and we can talk about zoning later when we have our discussion, but zoning is different, and that's what they're here. They're not requesting a general plan. They were here requesting that last time, and we denied it because we didn't feel like changing the general plan with the intent of what it was appropriate. This case, it appears that they've moved the site plan to fit the general plan, which is why they don't have to request a general plan change. All it is coming to us and saying, here's the historic zoning. Here's what we want to do with it. We'd like to make a change to that zoning. So you have to keep the general plan designation and the zoning separate because they're two different things, number one.
Lena, question.
Sure.
3.43 acres was already implied and in the first project that they presented. They haven't moved that out. So that acreage was part of the first project that we turned down.
Correct. And I think it was, because it was so far clear over to Quail Street and it imposed onto Quail Street and adjacent to those residents, that's where we were having the issues, was because it was directly adjacent to a residential area and it included that very low density bubble. It's no longer adjacent to the residential area and it doesn't include the very low density bubble any longer. That's my only point.
But it borders on the residential on the north that's already existing.
Of
There are
course,
homes that come down.
of course, but that mixed use residential designation on that bubble map actually incorporates several of those homes that are actually existing. Yeah. I mean, it comes clear over. That's why I say it's a bubble map. It's a general idea. Okay, here's my question for you guys. The staff report did not indicate your renderings of the independent living showed garages. Now I understand they're just intents, but I'm assuming with a two-story building that you're going to intend to have those garages. The staff report did not include if those garages were included in the parking requirement. I'm assuming they are, but is that the case?
Right.
That's all the questions I have.
Okay, very good. I have some questions as well. So in looking over this, I went back to our plan development code and looked through the different requirements to pass this zone change tonight. There's a couple of things that I don't think have been addressed yet, so I wanted to get those covered. So one of the items that is in there is, I'll just read it exactly. It says, this is F, indicate the density of uses within each land use component or phase using units per acre for residential uses and floor area ratio for non-residential components. So I don't know, do you have that number for us?
Will you state that question again?
So we're supposed to have the density of uses within each land use component using units per acre for residential uses and floor area ratio for non-residential components.
We can calculate that. We've got, or perhaps Councilman Drake has, that there's 110 units on. Bob, did we clarify the overall acreage?
Can you use the mic, Bob, so we have it on the record?
The entire site is 5.43 acres. The total legal description that's attached to this project.
Would you just divide that by the 110, get your density?
Yeah, again, you know, and maybe I'm not connecting or maybe you don't buy what I'm trying to sell here, but I don't think a project like this translates to normal residential density because so many of these are bedrooms.
Right, and I understand that. It just, our ordinance requires that they state that density.
Yeah, and normally
And we don't have that
90% of the
number.
PDR projects are residential projects. They're towns like we saw earlier tonight, or single-family subdivisions where density is a very useful measure. To me, trying to measure on one of these is like measuring density for a hospital. I mean, it's good to know the number of beds, maybe bedrooms, but there's not a very good direct between a single-family home or a dwelling and one of these bedroom.
So then we'd be looking for a floor area ratio if it's a non-residential component, according to our code, right?
Yeah.
I think if my math's right, it's about 20 units per acre.
Okay.
But you have to,
I think you got to
The way
use
the
the
ordinance
floor
is.
area on the way
You
that's
have-
written.
yeah, you have to.
You'd have to
discount
get into
that.
the square footage
Uh-huh.
is what we're, and I believe it's about 21,000 square feet per acre,
Okay.
if you roughly.
So, and I just want to stress that tonight we're passing according to our ordinance, a project plan. It has certain elements. There's A through K that we need all that information to even pass this zone change. So that was one of my questions. We don't have that number. Also, we need to know, there's supposed to be a lighting plan provided that's also in there, in those requirements. I haven't seen that as part of this plan. And then it does ask for typical elevations. You've given us some, but I haven't seen an elevation for the memory care unit. And where that's right up next to those homes, I definitely would want to see that elevation as well. And just so we're on the same page, I've reviewed this with our legal, that if whatever you present tonight is actually part of the zoning. And so if you vary very much from those, you'll have to come back, get a whole new zone. And where we don't know exactly what that memory care is going to look like, how can we even pass this if we don't have any idea? That's kind of the intent of the plan development, that the council can look at everything pretty closely. It doesn't have to be exact, but it has to be a pretty good idea of what it is. So we can say, okay, I think that'll work. And even in this zone or in this ordinance, it talks about what the council has to look at. And it says the council shall make a determination that the requested rezoning and project plan is in the public interest considering the community as a whole. And so I just have a hard time knowing if I can really say that without having all this information in front of me that's required in a project plan. So do you want to address any of those things that I've asked, like the lighting plan, the floor area ratio, and even on the commercial, you've said 3,000 to 5,000, but I think it's supposed to be a little more specified than that, but maybe I'm wrong.
So yeah, we'd love to address some of those. That we're not familiar, did not realize that there was a need for a lighting plan. Certainly that's something that we can accommodate. When it indicates and talks about typical elevations, it's talking about just that, typical elevations. If you continue to read on through that process, it talks about sketch plans and says specifically in the code, sketch plans provide a general concept of the project. There are no specific requirements for a sketch plan because this step is provided solely for the benefit of the applicant to get an initial review and response by project staff. The level of detail is low because the applicant is seeking a general reaction to the concept and does not need to spend large amounts of money on detailed engineering drawings. So the process, as you continue to read through this, indicates that each step we come forward. So for example, for preliminary plat, we will then have to get any plans that we have that we're currently working on approved again. Final plat, the same process, back through heritage, back through planning and zoning, back through city council, and then final plat as well. And then construction drawings as well, back through heritage, back through city planning and zoning, and back through city council. So I think the concept, or at least what we understood, is that the city, I know that Sterling Codes does, or American Legal, that they write code for a lot of towns and cities throughout this state, right? I think it's fair to say that, the typical renderings or typical elevations would be something that is very typical, that it's not, maybe nothing close to what we've shown as more of what our actual intent is. The memory care facility, I think we've shown enough of what type of building structure and architectural flavor there's going to be, that it wouldn't be hard to understand or know that that's going to be part of that, as well as knowing that each individual element is going to have to be reapproved or passed 3 or 4 different times as we finalize what that building plan is going to be.
Okay. So I
Garrett,
do want to, do
Sorry.
you want to cover this?
Yeah,
Because I think
do
there's a
want me to jump in and
misunderstanding
address
with the
that? And
developers.
In fact, Kyle, the section that you read that talks about the sketch plan, and you actually read this part, says the purpose of the sketch plan is to get an initial review and response to the project by the staff and potentially the planning commission. If you read on in the ordinance, it does require that prior to the city council approving a zone change, it requires the items that are listed in the project plan section. And that's where Jarrett has cited those from. So, you know, just from a legal perspective and a reading of the ordinance, Jarrett's right on in the items that he's asking for.
And are you indicating, I agree with the lighting plan. Are you talking about more specific elevations?
What I'm talking about is what is listed in the ordinance there,
Right.
and it's items A through K. So, you know, I think that's what Jarrett is looking for. And if the city council isn't satisfied that items A through K are available to them, then I think it's, you know, they would certainly be within their rights to request those things.
Sure, understood.
Okay, so with that, I'm definitely leaning more toward the table, just so the council is aware, just so that we can get that information. And we've seen plenty of PDR come through, and I'm usually used to a little bit more detail than we have here. We know that density every time. We know that we have a lighting plan. We have those things that are actually in our ordinance. So with that in mind, we do have all the citizen input as well. Council, do we want to start getting that input? Do we want to just do a motion now? Where are we sitting? I don't want to shut out the audience for sure, but we maybe want to save their comments for later if we're going to see this later. So I just want to kind of get your input.
Well, I'll tell you my concern, and I'll speak from sitting where the applicant's at, as a council, and that's where the ordinance, okay, we're looking at a zone change. This was voted down 5-0 last time. It's been moved, it's been changed. To go out and spend, I guess I'd kind of like to know as a council, for an applicant side, to go through and provide A through K elevations, renderings, all of that, only to say, no, this needs to be residential as a council. I think as a council, we may, you know, we probably ought to discuss a little bit so the applicant's clear, you know, if this is simply just going to come back only to be told, no, it needs to stay residential. I don't think it's fair as a council to send the applicant off to do that. So I do agree that renderings, you know, I would like to see the memory care unit. And we say, yeah, we'd love it single story, but let's keep in mind the homes behind that, as in the future, could be renovated to full 2-story, 35-foot homes. And so I do like the overall layout. I don't want to send the applicant out to go spend a whole bunch of money, and it is a whole bunch of money, only to have us say, no, we're going to vote it down. We just want it to be residential.
If we had any say in this, we would love to have some public comment. People are here. They've made an effort. We know what public comments usually do to the applicants, but I think they need to be heard too.
Okay. Council, we ready to move to that section?
I agree.
Okay. All right. So I will just call your name in the order that I received these. We would ask that you just keep your remarks to not more than 2 minutes, as it's said in the paper, unless we allot you more time. And if you just agree with something that's already been said, feel free to say ditto to those previous comments and add something new. So we will start with, I believe it's Michael Varon. I apologize if I'm saying that wrong. The floor is yours.
Oh.
And then just state your name and your address before speaking.
One moment, Jarrett, just a heads up. We potentially have people in the banquet room in the overflow that have submitted applications to speak. So once you're done speaking, if we have applicants or that want to speak in the banquet room, to come to the door to the council chambers. And once you're done speaking, if there's people there we'd ask you to exit and let them come in so they can have their time to come in and share their comments too, please.
Yes, my name is Michael Varon. My address is 1181 Gallon Road. I'm the first resident of the new Roan project on the corner of Benelli and Gallon. We really love it there. I'll try to make my comments short, obviously, within the time limit that I have. And let me just start with something maybe a little off from the project itself, but recently in the last couple of years, I had to deal with my aging father. And we would have loved to have a facility like this. I ended up having to move my dad 2 times just because of his transition to different phases of his aging, and didn't have this business model with these 3 different components, and it is really great. Just so that's comment from there. So let me talk a little bit about things that I like about the project. I like how the parking's been designed internal. Being on Benelli, I'm frankly a little surprised at the kind of traffic I am experiencing. And it's not from the homes there, it's from everybody coming into the community to get to the trails and so forth, from ATVs to motorcycles racing down the street. So a little different angle. So it's good to have that. The landscape setbacks I thought were really good. Like the idea of the commercial there to support some of the people there too. I know it was a challenge again, going back to my dad, having to take him out somewhere to do something that wasn't convenient. So this is a pretty cool thing. And just a reminder, as far as I understand, reading the files and the reports, this has a conditional use permit, which I believe gives the city a very broad level of authority and power. Should something be going wrong, you can basically go through and make further corrections and conditions. So just to comment on that. And then lastly, just quickly on the floor area ratio, and I don't know what the definition of that on your code is, but if typically that is the building footprint, not necessarily the total square footage of the buildings. So if I just used simple math, the simple math of the site area of the 5.3 acres is 232,000 and change square footage. The building square footage, whether it's 2-story or not, building footprint, 118,000 and some change. So that puts the floor area ratio beyond just the footprint about 51%. So I would say if you did it for the footprint, you're under a 50% floor area ratio, if that helps with your decisions. Anyway, those are my comments. Thank you for letting me speak.
Okay, thank you. All right, Anita Delelis. Sorry if I said that wrong.
Hi, my name is Anita DeLellis. I live at 3199 Santa Clara Drive. I'm going to come at this because other people are going to be talking about flooding and traffic and all of that. I'm going to come at it from a slightly different angle right now. I own a business on Santa Clara Drive. You all know it. It sits right behind the memory care building, which has no renderings, just FYI. And I'll be very honest, I wonder if the applicant has taken into account the traffic flow for the retail space. Their traffic counts have counted the residents, the people coming in and out. I'm not sure, I haven't heard anything about ambulances or trucks or anything like that yet. I'm assuming, I don't know if they're included in the traffic count or not, but we get, I would say 0.5% of our traffic is from walk-in traffic. It's all people that have driven to the location, to the destinations. Very few people walk up and down that road. One reason being, of course, it's 110 in the summer. Walking is not super conducive at that point. We're now asking people that want to go to the retail space to park down a slope, which we already understand is a relatively good grade, to walk from those parking spaces up to the retail space. I have an elderly mom. She's 93 years old. Physically, she's in very good shape. Mentally, not so. She would not be able to make that walk. So if she was living in that assisted living facility, which she currently is somewhere else, she would not be able to make that walk to those stores. So while I think it's a nice concept to be able to have a beauty parlor or barbershop or something like that there, I'm not sure if the applicants have thought enough about how that is in real life. Sorry. So that's just one thing that I wanted to bring up. Also, a little bit of a concern is if we have something like an ice cream parlor, what's the traffic going to be like on a Saturday night? The kids are all out. Kids in this country tend to drive at 16. That's very young. Where I grew up, I wasn't allowed to drive till I was 18. So it's a big change. But, you know, the kids are out and about. And how is that going to go with the assisted living facility? Having said all that, I'm not sure if the applicant is going to be able to screen who does get a space there. So that would also be a concern as to, we're asking for a barbershop or ice cream shop, but do the numbers down at that end of Santa Clara Drive, you know, are they able to support an ice cream shop or a barbershop or a hairdresser or whatever else you want to put in there? So as a business owner there, sure, having more retail would bring maybe more people down to my side of town, but just in my experience with the traffic and the people that I get coming to my store, I'm not sure that they're going to get the traffic that they think they're going to get in there. The only other thing, my husband actually wrote a comment, and I don't know if the comments are going to be read. Have you received his comment? Okay, so I'll let you speak to that when that comes up. The other thing about the retail space, trash, dumpsters, delivery trucks for the stores. A lot of times that's done behind the retail space. This would all have to be done right from Santa Clara Drive. So other people will mention and discuss the other parts of the project that we are very concerned about also, but I just don't want to have to repeat, they don't have to repeat what I've already said. So that's from my perspective. I also would feel extremely strongly about wanting to see the renderings for the memory care facility. It sits right behind my bedroom window. So that's all. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Anita. Okay, our next will be Luana Hafen. And again, just your name and address before you speak.
Okay, I'm Luana Hafen, 1371 Quail Street. I just want to have it on record that I don't think they should change the zoning in the historic district part of it. There's not much land left in the valley like that, and I think it should be preserved. Also, I agree with Councilman Drake. My mother was in a facility, and I went there every day, and I had relatives there every day, and it adds a lot to the density. And these buildings are already like dense with a lot of bedding and 2 stories. And I think it's too much for the valley to have the density of that. I was coming home from Harmon's the other day, and I was just looking at that place where they were going to put the facility, and I thought, how is that going to look? There's a little mini shopping mall coming around that corner, and there's no parking in front of it. And then they have this 2-story building in the middle of that, where the back faces the main road. So you'll see parking lots in the back of a building instead of the front of the building, which would be more aesthetically pleasing. I look at the buildings across the street from the city offices here, and I think it's a shame that we always see is the back side of the building. I don't think it would beautify our city to have that as a view, you know, coming and going on the roads. That's my main concern, is like the density and how it would look. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. All right, and next will be LeGrand Hafen.
LeGrand Haven, the same address as before, 1371 Quill. I'm just going to skip over. You all know how I feel about it, so I'm not going to belabor any of those points. One thing that I get kind of concerned about is during the architecture is based on the Jacob Hamlin home. I think he would shudder to think some of these buildings had his imprint on it. I think the face of the valley will be changed forever if this is approved. And I think that one thing that hasn't been mentioned is, you know, what does this do as far as opening a Pandora's box for the rest of the valley? Remember, we only have one street that's the main street. And with our valley so narrow, I can't see any more east and west main drives going through. And so that's just something to consider as well.
Thank you, LeGrand. Okay, next we have Crystal Hageman.
Crystal's in the other room. Would it be okay if I go and then I'll swap her places?
Sure, yeah.
I'm Denise Webster,
Okay.
1485 Chapel Street. So bear with me a little bit because Crystal and I have been asked by a lot of the people to represent them. So I might be a smidge long, but I tried to keep my remarks as short as possible. First, we do want you to know that we've been having many lengthy discussions with Kyle. We've visited the proposed site. We're working really hard to try to find some common ground. So you'll be happy to know we're trying not to spew venom and have enemies. We're doing the best we can to work together. But we have been asked by the other people to bring some of their concerns to here, and none of these will surprise Kyle. I've thrown every dart at him already. So just so you're all aware. So some of the main concerns, first of all, and LeGrand alluded to this, but this project will forever change the landscape of Santa Clara. I told Kyle that this is a huge responsibility on his shoulders because he will either be hated or a hero. And because this is in the historical district, and because the historical district is what sets Santa Clara apart from every other city that any developer tries to put a project in, this is first and foremost the main concern of the citizens. The small town feel, the homes, the trees, the historic aspect, and most important, the people is what makes Santa Clara what it is today. Whatever goes here will have a huge impact and cannot be undone. For that reason, we feel it's crucial that we get this right. That being said, is assisted living the best thing we can put here? I honestly don't have the answer to that. The developers believe this is the best choice, but they've obviously had more time to think about this than we have. We haven't had time to brainstorm and imagine the possibilities of what could go here. However, we do know what we don't want. We don't want a Maverick or storage units, and especially we don't want townhomes. The high density is something we are very concerned about, as the discussion has been tonight. We understand, though, that it is zoned residential, or for part of it is zoned residential, and we know that that really probably isn't going to work either. We know no one wants to live on the corner of two busy streets and on a floodplain. And we know the amount of money needed to create stable ground for residences would price them out of the market. I'm not sure if there is something more wonderful out there that we haven't thought of yet that we could put there. So is assisted living the worst choice? Not necessarily, but we haven't had time to ponder more possibilities. Our first choice as citizens is that we want nothing there. We love it as it is. We also pointed that out to the developers, and they bought this knowing the zoning. Recently, you told homeowners that purchased homes next to the commercial property on the Heights that they bought it knowing what it was zoned, and so now they have to live with a Dollar Tree in their backyard. Likewise, these developers have purchased this and most of the land in Santa Clara knowing what the zoning is, but hoping for a change. While this part of this property is zone commercial and part is for optional multi-use, the rest isn't. We don't want to be hypocritical in what we tell our citizens when it comes to purchasing their properties knowing the zoning, but hold our developers to a different standard. However, because we were told by one of Kyle's partners that something would be built here, we stopped and asked ourselves this question. If something is going to go there, would it be better to work with the developers and have some input for something we could live with versus continually fighting the same battle, which at some point, one of us would give up? Either the citizens will get tired of fighting, the developers will get tired and sell the property, or the city council is going to get tired and just finally pass something to stop the madness. So would it be in the community's best interest to work together with the developer and finding something that would appease all? Kyle is committed to us that he would be willing to put together a community advisory committee to help and give input. So this sounds more hopeful for us. I told Kyle that basically this is like someone is pregnant, having a baby, but we who live around it have to raise this child. 15 years down the road, we will have to live with whatever this place looks like. They all look beautiful in the beginning, but what happens years later is part of the concern. Thus, the reason we don't want condos, townhomes, or rentals. Again, what is the best choice for this corner and this community? And what it looks and feels, does it fit the historical district? I don't have the answer for that. Perhaps with time and some thoughts and brainstorming, we would. Several neighbors have suggested some good ideas. One, swap the property with the church by Dutchman's and let them build a stake center here. Two, make the homes for couples to be little homes on the main road to keep the quaintness. Three, a park. Four, a place like Staley Farms where people can come to activities and see the farming in action with fruit trees, gardens, and such, thus maintaining the residential agriculture zone, which is extremely precious right now. So perhaps there's something amazing out there that we haven't thought of yet. As it stands now, the main concern the people are having is trust. No one trusts the developers. It's nothing personal to these developers in particular. It's just that developers have a reputation of coming into a beautiful small town, buying up all the property, changing the landscape and feel of the town, and leaving the citizens to raise and care for what they have long since left behind to find the next deal. The truth is, Kyle is the only one of the developers that live in Santa Clara. But he doesn't live right next to this project, and neither does anyone on the planning committee or on city council. Wendell does look right down on it, so I know it has some impact on him. Part of this trust issue comes from knowing that what they submit tonight is what you are voting on. They have told us these are not the final drawings, and we understand that you can't spend $250,000 on drawings if it gets turned down, as Ben mentioned. But our concern is submitting this and then having major changes. For example, we requested that if there is a commercial building for shops on the main road, that it not exceed 1 story. Kyle presented to us a nice rendering of a building with 1.5 stories. We were okay with that, as it would probably have a nice viewing deck or place where tables for a restaurant or a sandwich shop could be in that commercial space. The concern is when they say, well, maybe 1 to 2 stories. That makes us wonder if we're being told what we want to hear, then it will change later. We would like this community committee in place to make sure that those specific requirements would be honored. The other concern brought up about trust was what happens if we get told one thing, but then maybe his partners don't like it, or the partners have the say and he can't change it. While we may trust Kyle, can we trust the others? And these aren't necessarily all from me, just so I can make that, I'm being a voice. The last main concern is simply the size. We were super grateful they cut down the 10 units and dropped it off the upper plateau. However, many have still voiced that the size is still a concern. We have asked for it to be scaled back and not necessarily 2-story. They have said that to be feasible, they need a certain number of units. We aren't kidding ourselves. We know that money is the key here. We know they need to make their money back. We're just hoping we could have it scaled back a little more should this be approved. We also want to make sure that the 3 acres that are on the elevated plateau by the Levitts and the Hafens remain residential agriculture so that we don't lose the agriculture ground. It appears that it's not on there. I just want to make sure of that. As has been mentioned, as far as the bedding goes, each and every bed, even though it's not a residence, it could have the potential of 2 to 3 cars a day, not counting the workers there. But in a home, even with 3, 4, or 5 bedrooms, we don't have 2 drivers per bedroom. So there's typically not 10 cars per bedroom in my home. You know, we might have 3 or 4 or whatever, depending on how many drivers we have. Another concern was having a 2-story building for seniors. The renderings show part of the units that are 2-story, and some people were concerned that maybe seniors will have a harder time with 2 stories. So to wrap up, the citizens' first choice is to have nothing there. If that is not an option, we would rather have an opportunity to work with the developer that is willing to take input from us and hold them to the word and commitment of size and looks. So should the city council choose to approve this, we would request that part of the requirements would be to have a community advisory board that has input on size, historical looks, and keeping commitments of what the citizens want, not just writing plaques or thinking up statues. Again, with trust being the main issue, most are worried that the plans will change once approved, and so for that reason, they don't want it at all. We are trying to bridge that gap and be open, but without exact drawings to vote on or wondering if there is something that would be more beneficial to the community, it's hard to give a full stamp of approval. Again, the developers feel this is best. We don't disagree that it's not good. We just don't want to mess this up as it will change the city forever. So if you do choose to pass it, the citizens pledge to work harmoniously with the developers via the Community Advisory Board. We would also like to see the renderings of the assisted living and the C-shaped unit to receive approval, because there's a little bit of confusion as whether the whole thing is 2-story, meaning it would be a very, very huge building that we're looking at even down the slope. So there's a few that would still like to see a few more renderings to feel that if this is something that you're going to approve of, that that we know what we're approving. And we appreciate your efforts and your time and what you're doing for us as a community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Denise. All right, is Crystal available now? Okay, very good. All right, Brad Hafen is next.
Brad Hafen, 2485 Riverfront Drive. I am Kyle's father. I'm Code Hafen's spouse, who's been on the was on the council for 12 years. I have sat and watched this development over, it seems like a long period of time. I can tell you that he has sweat, blood, and tears over this. He wants to make it something that is very desirable and something that will make Santa Clara even better. I've had 2 of my parents were both in assisted living. It would have been very nice if they were here in Santa Clara and not in St. George. And you think, well, 15 minutes both ways, cut your time down. My wife, her mother was in assisted living. I think this is a great project for Santa Clara. I think it will enhance Santa Clara. It's a beautiful project, and I'm for it. I think it will really help us. We're not going to stay like we are. Denise and Kyle have spent a lot of time together the last week with numerous citizens going over this. I think they're both committed that they want the best for Santa Clara and that they would have an advisory council to help them design and keep it in the quaint Santa Clara that we love. Thanks.
Thank you, Brad. All right, next we have CJ Aldridge.
CJ Aldridge, lot owner over here in the Sycamores. I'm actually really excited about this project. This will be essentially in my backyard, and this type of a project is a good, quiet neighbor. And so I really like that about it. I also have this idea of my kids walking down to go visit grandma and grandpa and being able to do that, after school or, whenever. And I think that's a really neat idea. I think Santa Clara has an emphasis on family. And I think being able to keep our parents and grandparents and loved ones close by is really wonderful. And so I'm very supportive of this project. Thanks.
Thank you, CJ. All right, next we have Ed Coombs.
I'm Ed Coombs. I live 3309 Hamlin in the historic district. Over the past couple of developments that have come through here, specifically through Havens, we hear how much they admire and love or want to support the small town charm of Sycamore lined streets and pioneer era homes. And we all love this. That's why we live here. That's what brings and keeps people here. What's curious to me is the developers' plans consistently seem to oppose that long term and chip away at that. I think the thing that I struggle the most is they want to put either a 1.5 or a 2-story strip mall on Santa Clara Drive, kitty corner to the Hamlin House. Like, the parking doesn't support it. Traffic certainly doesn't support it. I don't know how they're going to widen the road to put in a turn lane. They're absolutely going to need something like that they have at Chapel intersection. And a traffic light could help, but it's just going to be a bottleneck. Like, logistically, I just don't understand how this is going to not really snarl up this side of town. And just how is it going to blend into the scape? All the other businesses like Rylu's Bistro, it was formerly Clee's, or Fry's, Root Market, or even where I work at Evoke Therapy, we're all way set back. And this thing from the pictures, it's road, sidewalk right there, and there it is, the building. It really stands out and doesn't blend into what the feeling of the historic district is. The other thing that concerns me, if they're charging residents $2,500 a month, roughly what, 100,000, 120,000 a year, just for the assisted living, what's the rent going to be like for these shops? Like, are people going to be able to make a go at it? Because that hasn't been fleshed out at all. And then how are the shops going to make a go at it? I don't understand how people are going to park there. People really going to come looping around up Pinelli and then park in those places, or are they going to pull off somewhere onto either Hamlin Drive or onto Gates or somewhere else and then park and walk and make more of a dangerous intersection there? Like, for me, that doesn't make sense on, just how these things are going to operate. The flyer that they talked about that came around, it was an announcement for a Zoom meeting. I didn't see any vote for it. I'd love to see who voted for that, who they actually physically talked to. Like, there wasn't a checklist like, do you approve, do you not approve, do you not care? Like, I didn't see that on the flyer. I just saw like, hey, we're gonna have a Zoom. I'm like, okay, another Zoom meeting for this, great. The thing that also concerns me is just the smell and the pollution that's gonna come from this. If you're gonna have this common area with 100 people coming to eat there, we're essentially gonna be building a Chuck-a-Rama or a Golden Corral that a lot of people are gonna be smelling all down the valley as that scent travels. On top of that, we're gonna have medical waste, and the sun's gonna hit those dumpsters in the summer. It's really not gonna be a great place to live near or downwind of. I don't think that's been taken into account. It's a big facility. So we're gonna have a strip mall and a Golden Corral built in this intersection, dress it up however we like. That is going to be some of the impacts to the senses. Where I work at Evoke, we only have 40 clients on average a year. I've got at least 8 truckloads coming a year where they're having to bring diesels in and I'm having to unload pallets. I have at least 3 food deliveries a week. I have UPS, FedEx, USPS multiple times coming to drop things. And we're a pretty small business with nobody living there. All of our people are out in the desert. They're going to have a massive amount of stuff coming, especially if assisted living people are buying stuff. That's going to be a huge impact on the Postal Service. A lot more vehicles coming that way. And for me, it just seems too big. I mean, would it be ideal if they just kept it at what it was and let them build houses? I think that would fit more. I think if they want to build this big installation, let's put it up at Pioneer Parkway where that traffic flow can handle it. Down here, it doesn't make sense to put something this large right next to the crown jewel of the historic district, namely the Jacob Hamlin House. So I would request that we just pass on this and let it stay residential. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, next we have Tina Wild.
Hi, Tina Wild, 3768 Windmill Drive. I just want to say that I oppose the zone changing and having this facility there. I think the scale is too large for there. And I've seen that area underwater multiple times. I can't even tell you how many times. And there were 2 houses next to the retail shops that we watched fall in the river, 2010. I live near Harmon's. There's a lot of activity up there, a lot of building. It's a beautiful facility. I would welcome it in my neighborhood. I just don't think that this is the right place for it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tina. All right, next we have Nathan Muno.
Nathan Muno. I'm at 3865 Mitchell. I sold my house on London Lane and I've got a lot in the Sycamores. So I'm excited. I'm going to engineering here soon. So my backyard looks directly onto what's there. I have mixed emotions, but I'm pretty impressed. I'm impressed with some of the comments, the concerns. It's funny because when you hear all these different ideas come through, it shapes your opinion, right? And different things that you hear, it helps you have a better sense of feeling like you have a good placement for your thoughts. And so I was excited initially for this. I've lived in several different places throughout the country. I'm a general contractor. I own a business on Sunset Boulevard. I'm also a realtor. And I look at all these different things from different angles and different eyes. And a lot of the concerns I don't see as being issues, but there are some valid ones. The river, I've seen it flood. I also look at some of those things as being a burden to the applicant. But a couple of comments were made that I want to address, and that is when people question the developer and partners, that's why I'm here. When I moved down here, I had nothing to do, didn't know any of them. I was called in as a contractor. I dealt with something, and I was blown away with how they dealt with the situation. Honestly, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm buying in their development, the Sycamores. It was a real game changer for me because contractors don't just do something like that. They don't make something right 7 years after the fact. I've never known a contractor to do that, a general contractor. So I have an incredible amount of respect for all the partners that Kyle and the folks that he's working with. As far as there's a lot of comments of different people that said, hey, I can't be there tonight. I can't be there. And my phone's kind of blowing up. And I said, well, are you for it or against it? Come down. And it sounds like there's I don't know if those are going to be read, but anyways, there's a lot more than when we started this journey. There's a lot more people that are in support of it, but I myself have a little bit of reservations. I mentioned one, the flood kind of makes me a little bit nervous, the flooding. But once again, there's a lot of these things that I think we're trying to fit inside a box that we really don't have to. We don't have to do that yet. This is for the zone change, and even the zone change for this, the way I understand it, for this specific project. So if it changes, this project changes, it doesn't mean that just any maverick or anybody can come in there. I'm up top and I'm struggling with this thought. I'm thinking, I'm looking at this big box, this Dollar Tree or whatever it is, and I thought, I wanted to fight it tooth and nail. So it's coming full circle around, and I'm thinking, oh, now I'm on the other side. I'm saying, hey, I'm promoting this. What better to put where I feel like my wife walking the dogs, my kids going to school, all these different things. What better neighbor than to have something like that? I might be there. My parents, I might actually get them to come down to Southern Utah from Northern Utah. They know that, I know they want to. So there's all these different things. And I think Jacob Hamblin home, I love the dedication to the heritage and the historic aspect of Santa Clara. Yes, that's why most of us are here. But I have to say, it's going to change. Santa Clara is going to change. This whole area is changing. As a realtor, I see people coming in from the two biggest spots, California and Colorado. Now, Santa Clara, if that doesn't scare you enough, not putting anybody down from California, my wife's from there, but her family's from here. So we have family buried in Santa Clara, and we love it here. So my simple point is the other applicants coming in down the road, they're not gonna take the time. They're not gonna offer an advisory board. They're not gonna put these things together to make every fighting effort to make it something that fits for everybody. I really appreciate Denise and her comments. I mean, I've seen the evolution of these comments, and we're coming together as a city, and it's exciting to see that. And I think we're realizing that if we can all kind of put in and have an opinion and have a sway as to how it looks, what it does, that's I think that what we need to accomplish. So anyways, there's some other comments. I guess they're probably going to read them, but my wife is in agreement with me along with several others. There's some older folks that aren't coming out really because of COVID, and I respect that. So thank you so much, Council. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Sure, go ahead and come back up, Anita. Just hop up to the microphone so we catch you in the minutes.
Anita DeLellis, 3199 Santa Clara Drive. I'm sorry, I forgot to present this when I spoke. It's a petition signed by approximately 130 people. Again, some that were uncomfortable coming this evening, but they did sign a petition that we sent out, and they were all opposed to the zone change. So I'd just like to present that and put it on record or whatever I need to do.
Okay, you bring it up to me. Okay. Yes, thank you. All right, so that's the end of our yellow cards. Brock, do you want to move to our online?
We just have the one. That's what we have. This is from Mr. DeLellis. I'm opposed to a zoning change for the assisted living project. This was voted down unanimously in July, and the plan remains very much the same. The footprint is only half an acre smaller with 10 fewer residents. The addition of commercial space at Santa Clara Drive and Gates Lane creates an even larger traffic impact. It's hard to imagine a worse design for traffic flow, with Gates Lane being the property's only entrance and exit, along with a commercial parking lot. The Gates Lane and Santa Clara Drive intersection is not suited for a traffic light, as there are private residents on two of the corners, and the project is still located next to an active river wash. I asked the council to ask themselves if they would put their own parents there, knowing its history of flooding. There are better uses for this land that would improve the downtown area, such as a river walk with a few small shops, trails, a ballpark, etc. With some creative thinking, it could perhaps be monetized, and the developer would be doing a great service to the community, which will buy them positive PR within Santa Clara and Ivan cities.
Okay. That is all the comments we received. Okay, very good. All right, well, with that, we'll go back to our general business, item B1. And council, you can hear further discuss this and potentially make a motion. So I'll turn it over to you, whoever would like to speak.
Can I ask a question of Matt first?
For sure.
I know, I don't know if it's generally true, but it has happened where we've gotten project plans and they don't have all of those details within the project plan, because we've seen those often enough. We require all of those items in the actual site plan, which I think is what Kyle's referring to, that if something were to get approved, he has to come back.
Yeah.
Because all of those are required in a site plan.
Mhm.
So before we do, and even if we were to consider approving a zone change request, all of that's going to be fleshed out after, I mean, even if we did that, we're still going to see that in the site plan, correct?
Well, the zone change request is what's before you. I don't know if,
Well, right, I understand
Right.
that, but my point is we've approved a number of project plans that don't have all those features, all the elements in them. There's 11 elements, they don't have all
Sure.
of them in there.
yeah, and I mean, I would just say that I think in any of those cases, you could go back and look, and the council has had good reason to do that. In other words, you felt like one of those wasn't necessary because of the nature of the project or something like that. So, every project is unique. Certainly don't discount the fact that there may be things on there that you feel are not applicable or not necessary. But, that's what our ordinance says. And those project plan requirements are, that was the main thing I wanted to be clear about. I mean, the project plan is required for a zone change, not a sketch plan. So whether the council decides what's been presented is sufficient for that or not, that's up to you guys. So, and it's been stated earlier that, one of the purposes of the PD zone is so that the council can have that more in-depth input in a project. And furthermore, this is a legislative action. This is not a check the boxes, and if all the boxes check, it's an administrative vote and the outcome is sort of predetermined. This is just like the legislature sitting at the state or wherever, voting whether to change the law of the town. So there's really quite a bit of discretion given to you as the city council as to how you want to take this.
Can I ask just a question to the applicant? Is this community advisory board, just your feelings on that? In speaking, it sounds like you've been visiting with them. And again, it's new and it's not new. Unofficially, Austin Anderson's group over on the corner of Lava Flow worked tirelessly with the residents in that neighborhood to where literally the residents, when it was all said and done, applauded when it was approved and went out. So we've seen great successes in that, but your feelings on that? And
We would love the input. There's a lot of really great ideas. And, we've shared some of those ideas with, the concerns with traffic and some of these things that, depending on your opinion, it's coming or it doesn't matter what goes there, it's going to have a traffic impact. But the design elements of, it's a large building. How can we quantify that? I think by good architectural design and elements that pay homage to Santa Clara, whether it's rooms or wings being named after pioneers or, statues, plaques, I think that Denise mentioned, we would love to have input from an advisory board, in addition to the Heritage Committee, and for ideas on ways to make this better, ways to make it fit, ways to make it feel like it wasn't just a developer that came in and participated and built something and left. We would welcome that. And I know I've spoke to Denise and Crystal and Penny at length about that concept, and we would absolutely love feedback of them and other individuals who wanted to participate in a respectful way and share their ideas and implement those ideas to make it great, similar to what Austin did.
Are you okay if it's an actual condition?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I think they would feel better if it was a condition, and we would be fine with that.
Okay, council, any other comments or motions?
I'd like, you got a comment?
I have a comment. I just, I've known Brad and Kyle all their lives, and I know that they would like Santa Clara to develop the best way possible. The question in this particular case is I think everybody likes the idea of the assisted living. The question is where, and do we create a special zone for the assisted living, or do we send the assisted living people to where it's already located? So that, in my mind, the citizens of Santa Clara at a point in time want to be here in a single-family residential area as best they can, and that the multifamily, the mixed-use zone, those were all created to satisfy a need in downtown Santa Clara. But numbers-wise, I think that to protect the integrity of Santa Clara, we need to follow some general plans, and that's probably what I believe the guideline was with the general use plan. The zoning ordinance, to me, is a fairly simple thing to look at, and if we decide that it needs to be adjusted in a minor way, or reviewed, or even the general plan reviewed, to be able to involve the citizenry in making that adjustment rather than making it a developer making that decision, I think is crucial to protecting the integrity of Santa Clara. So in my mind, I just think that we need to relook at it. I don't know that anything has changed in my mind with what's been presented here, other than some advisory things that have been given to the developer to maybe try and push this through. But it's still creating a density level that, to me, is not minor. It's a major density change from 2 to 20.
You ready for a motion?
If you would like.
I'd like to make the motion that we deny the zone change requests from residential R110 and residential agricultural to planned development residential, and deny the request for conditional use permit.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Wendell, a second by Denny. Some discussion on that. The conditional use permit was already passed by the Planning Commission. That's out of our purview. So we wouldn't want that to be part of the motion. Is that correct, Matt?
You're talking about on the conditional use permit, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's already a done deal, right?
Yeah, it was passed, obviously conditional on the zone change also passing. So it only takes effect if you approve the zone change.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on that motion?
What was the end of your motion, your last sentence? Sorry, I didn't catch it. Did you have it?
It was discussing the conditional use permit.
Oh,
Okay, any other discussion? All right, so we will vote on it then. Let's do roll call. We'll start with Wendell.
Aye for the motion I made.
Correct, yeah, this is for your motion. Denny?
Aye.
I'll also say aye.
Nay.
nay.
All right, so denial passes 3-2. Thank you everyone for your input and for all the time you've given us on this item. And we hope the developers can move forward in some other way. All right, so we'll move on to our next item, which is item D2, which is consider an amended plan to develop a residential zone and project plan for proposed residential development, Regal Living. And actually, before I continue reading that, I do want to point out that the developer asked that we table this. They wanted to wait until we have our gated community zoning figured out and also the plan for the golf course up there. So there is no representation here for that. So I would just ask the council to table that if possible. It's item B2, the Regal Living.
Okay, good. I guess I'm sooner.
Does anyone want to table item B2?
I move that we table item number 2 according to the developer's request.
Okay, motion by Denny,
Second.
second by Lena. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Council, would you like to take a 5 and breathe a little bit and then come back, or do you want to continue?
Take 5 and literally breathe a little bit.
Okay. All right. So let's pause the meeting. It is 7:17. So let's join back at 7:25. Can't breathe. Chris gave us the okay. All right, so we are on to the next of our general business, which is item number 3. Consider approval of state required affordable housing report. And I believe Bob will take this.
Yeah. So 10 or 12 years ago, the state legislature required that affordable housing be part of the city general plan. So we're pretty much familiar with that issue. And 2 years ago, in 2019, the legislature passed another law regarding affordable housing, try and push cities to be a little more aggressive on affordable housing. As you recall, they required cities to pick at least three strategies out of a menu of a possible 23. Those strategies are in the state code now. And so Santa Clara in 2019, the year 2019, we did pick 3, and we'll go through those. Start with the Planning Commission. They actually picked 4. Said, let's pursue these, but we had to do 3. And then in 2020, we had to take steps to try and implement those strategies and provide a report to the state, which is due December 1st of this year. And then in the coming years, we have to annually then provide a report on our efforts to promote affordable housing. So anyway, what we're doing tonight then is just reviewing this report that's due to the state on December 1st. So in 2019, we started with the Planning Commission. We picked three strategies out of that menu list. And I will recap what those strategies were selected. So the first strategy, and it was item A under the state's menu list, says rezone for densities necessary to assure production of moderate income housing. So we know the challenges here. Santa Clara traditionally has been single family homes on quarter-acre lots. But anyway, that, without going into a lot of detail, that was selected as one strategy, rezone for densities. And we'll talk in a minute about how we have moved on that. The second strategy was allow for and reduce regulations for accessory dwelling units in residential zones. 8 accessory dwelling units, and so we took that on, and we actually did reduce the regulations that deal with them. But the third strategy was selected. It said allow for higher densities in mixed use zones, commercial centers, or employment centers. So that was an amendment actually approved to the city general plan by the city council in December 2019. So we met that. We've selected the 3 strategies. The fourth one the Planning Commission recommended was implement zoning incentives for low to moderate income units in new developments. So anyway, we went over and beyond the minimum. So then in 2020, the city had to take steps to implement that, or try to implement those strategies. So going back to the first strategy, it says actions taken in 2020 to implement the above strategies. Number 1, rezone for densities necessary to assure production of moderate income housing. Well, in 2019 and 2020, Santa Clara City has rezoned a number of properties for higher density to help promote the production of affordable housing. A couple of examples of zone changes. One was to be the Heritage Point townhomes. This is the project that was on state trust lands, approximately 7 acres, just on Santa Clara Drive, just east of here. The project has 55 2-story townhome units, along with some future commercial will be part of the project. But anyway, that was a significant zone change to promote higher density and some affordable housing. Another example is one that was actually on tonight's agenda, but that's Regal Homes at Black Desert. In 2019, the Santa Clara City Council approved a concept plan and a general plan amendment for the Black Desert project, of which 298 acres are located within Santa Clara and another 300 acres are within Ivan City and St. George. The concept plan for the Black Desert allowed for up to 1,937 new dwelling units in various development pods scattered throughout the property. Phase 1 will be a 200-unit project on 19 acres proposed by Regal Homes of Utah. This project is proposed as a rental project, not to be subdivided, but is strictly rented out. Now, the applicants, again, we tabled that tonight, but in this report, we mentioned that it was pending before the city council. But that 200 homes is designed to accommodate the needs of workforce housing, according to the applicants. So that could be a significant boost to, the local supply of workforce housing. Let's see.
Did the Desert Village, would that be one also?
It could be, yeah, that could be added because that was, in fact, in the report in 2019, we meant, I'm kind of going over part of this report, not covering it all, but we do mention that the D.R. Horton home was approved for, I think it was 185 townhomes. That project has now become the Desert Village. So that'd be another example. Second strategy was allow for and reduce regulations for accessory dwelling units in residential zones. So as you may recall, it's about a year ago, January 2020, the City Council approved an amendment to the city zoning code, which allowed accessory dwelling units to be detached, single-level units, and not just attached, which was the previous code. Prior to a year ago, the only place you could do an ADU is an addition to the house or part of the garage over a garage. And we amended that to say an accessory dwelling unit could be a single level detached unit. So that was a significant change to that ordinance to make it more flexible.
Ben's the perfect example.
I was gonna say, I actually love this. I mean, we used it on our property, but I like it for when you think about your owner occupied, you're gonna check your renter, whoever you've got there. For us, it's my wife's parents, but down the road, it could be anybody, but you're maintaining the yard. You can charge a rate that probably isn't market value because you own the place. And it just, I like it in all of those reasons.
So I think we've met that strategy because again, the state code said reduce regulations for it. And that's what we did. We reduced the regulations relating to accessory dwelling units. So I think strategy number 2 has been accomplished. The third one, the strategy was allow for higher densities in mixed use zones, commercial centers, or employment centers. Well, we just recently have amended the PD chapter. And in the PD commercial section, where the density was previously limited to 12 units per acre, we changed that, or the council approved the change to allow somewhat of a flexible density. So there is not a hard cap in a planned development commercial zone right now under the new code. So the new code amendment allows a flexible upper density limit in a PD commercial by allowing the Planning Commission and City Council to approve a project plan without having a hard density cap in the zoning code. Of course, there are other things that definitely it's not wide open. We've got height limits, we've got open space requirements, got parking requirements, got landscape requirements. So there are some things that come into play that will limit it. But anyway, that is being more flexible. And so allowing an applicant to come forward if he's in a planned development commercial zone to propose a density that may be greater than 12 units per acre. So in the report, we say this additional development flexibility will allow for densities to exceed the formerly prescribed limit of 12 dwelling units per acre. So that code was just recently adopted. Now we don't see any effect of that yet. It's going to take the future years to see how meaningful that actually turns out to be. So the above three listed strategies were implemented in 2020 in compliance with the regulations found in the Utah Code 10-9A-403 and 408. So, and then in addition to these three actions, the Planning Commission recommends a fourth possible strategy is noted below, and that was 5, implement zoning incentives for low to moderate income units in new developments. So Santa Clara City is interested in pursuing this strategy of providing incentives to developers to produce affordable housing units. No specific plan or code amendment has been discussed at this point, but the city has an interest in exploring what other cities are doing to incentivize affordable housing production. So bottom line, we've met the state mandate. We can send this report to the state and at least take care of this particular mandate.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Council, any questions? All right, then I believe we just need a motion.
I'd make a motion that we approve the state required affordable housing report as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion by Ben, second by Denny. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. All right, move on to item number 4, which is consider approval of a project plan for proposed Mo Bettis restaurant and swig drive-through in a planned development commercial zone located approximately at 3510 Pioneer Parkway in front of Harmon's store. Project consists of the site plan and building elevation drawings. Applicant Kristen Barrows, presented by Bob.
Okay, again, this is an existing PD commercial zone, one of the pad C in front of the Harmon store. The ordinance requires a public hearing be held on the project plan, which we know is the site plan and the building elevation drawings. The Planning Commission held that hearing a week ago. The use in the planned development commercial zone, it does list restaurants or other eating or drinking establishments as a permitted use. Site plan proposes a 4,081 square foot single level building with flat roof to house 2 restaurants. Those are, again, Mo Bettis and Swig Drive-In. The building is 26 feet in height and has an exterior of synthetic stucco and 2 brick colors, a black and a red brick, and also an ebony colored split-faced CMU. The colors are intended to complement Harmon's store and also reflects the red hills and black lava common to Santa Clara. There are 29 parking spaces for employees and customers, plus access to the common area parking in front of the Harmon store. The city parking standards require 1 parking space per 100 square feet of gross floor area, which would translate to 40 spaces. So the applicant's providing 29 on site and the other 11 comes from the common area parking in front of the grocery store. The unique thing about this site plan, Brock, if we have that, we could pull that up. The site plan has 2 drive-through lanes. They're 12 and a half feet wide drive-through lanes. And one of those lanes is partially within the front setback area. So today there's a 16-foot wide landscape strip along Pioneer Parkway. The applicant proposes to reduce that by 5 feet, and they would widen the existing sidewalk from 5 feet to 10 feet. And then the 11-foot wide landscape strip along Pioneer Parkway will be augmented with other landscaping elsewhere on the site. Overall, 20% of the site is in landscaping according to the site plan legend. The landscape areas include the islands within the parking lot, and parking lot lights will be shielded or hooded to prevent light pollution. So, do they? Oh, let's see, when we come back, maybe we can look at the landscape plan. This site is heavily landscaped. Maybe that, yes, here's a good site. And maybe Krista Dvoros might be on Zoom, but she's the architect involved in this project. The building elevations, again, it's red, black, and gray with a little tan. I think it's pretty attractive. 26-foot tall building. It has this synthetic stucco, also called EFS. And then again, 3 types of brick and CMU, a red, black, and a dark gray. And the synthetic stucco is kind of a tan. So it's actually quite an attractive building. And at the Planning Commission, we had colored elevations. Maybe we can get to those. The Planning Commission recommends approval of the proposed project plan, which is the site plan and building elevation drawings. Also with approval for the drive-through lane, which will utilize a portion of the front setback on the condition that the installation of the project landscaping matches the landscape plan presented to the Planning Commission. I don't know if you have any questions.
Yeah, can we see those color elevations? I know we were a little nitpicky on the car wash next door.
Like, I couldn't find them in the packet. So
One thing on the landscape strip and the sidewalk out front and the planter boxes, Brock, I and Jack went out and walked the area. And if we extend the sidewalk along that Pioneer Parkway to 10 feet, it goes right through the power poles. Power poles are like 6 feet out. So rather than trying to meander around the power poles, we suggested that maybe we keep the sidewalk 5 feet. And instead of, like we talked about, putting the planters on the street, we move those 6 feet back and we extend the sidewalk where the planters are to 6 feet. And then the planters would extend into the landscape. So then you're not reducing your landscape to the drive-through. You still have your additional landscape strip, you know, the width is there. But it doesn't make sense to put the sidewalk through the power poles or go up to a power pole, go around the power pole and go out and then around the power pole. But what we did between this pad C and the car wash is there's supposed to be a sidewalk there. So we actually put 2 planter boxes, one on each side of the sidewalk to kind of accent that entrance, to kind of make it stand out a little bit. And then we put close to the corners of pad C and closer to the corners of the car wash, we put the planter boxes kind of closer to the power pole on those ends of the pad, so it spaces out and looks real nice and attractive, even with the reduced sidewalk.
So the car wash has the same problem with the planter, with the power poles then?
Yes, each property, each pad has a big power pole right in the middle, and it runs, you know, right along where the 10-foot sidewalk would be. And what we did on pad B, I believe that was the one it's on the corner Cafe Rio. We actually reduced the sidewalk down to 5 feet before it got out of the pad because of the pole issue. It's currently 5 feet, right, Brock?
I believe, yes, it
And
is
we were-
currently at 5.
And we were going to widen it to 6 at the planter to put the planter farther off of there. So the planter box will actually be 6 feet away from the curb. So, you know, it doesn't obstruct traffic going through like we have now with the planter box against the street. It'll stay 5 feet all the way, except for where the planter boxes are. There'll be a strip there. Right, so the landscape will remain. A lot of the landscape improvements that exist there now, all the water lines are like right behind the sidewalk at like 8 feet to 6 feet. So all of those lines would have to be torn out or pour concrete over the, you know, where the boxes are, and that doesn't make sense for maintenance and things.
So effectively, what it sounds like is this project then can shift. Well, since we're not going to have the additional 5 foot of sidewalk, that landscape area will basically remain intact.
Hey, Bob,
This is Kristen Voros. I've got the colored renderings that I can pull up if I could share my screen. Do you want me to do that?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay. Oh, it looks like host is disabled participant screen sharing.
Not anymore.
I think we just changed it for you.
Thank you. Oh, and then we can also look at the landscape plan after. So this, I guess maybe we'll do another one here. So this is the updated landscaping plan showing those planter boxes dropped in. So you can see the one here that we'll be putting in, and then the one here that the car wash will be putting in to accent that sidewalk connecting through. And then we'll have one more here. And then in terms of the colored renderings, this is renderings that we did when we were originally doing pad B to basically give an idea of materials for all of the pads on the site. So the materials will be consistent with what we've done on the Harmon store and then also on sort of the non-Cafe Rio side of pad B because Cafe Rio had some of their own sort of specialized materials. But on the opposite side, these would be the same materials. So like Bob was saying, a red brick, a dark charcoal CMU, which matches what is on the Harmon's building, and then the stucco is a lighter gray color that would match what we've got going on at pad B.
Okay, very good. Council, any questions for Bob or for the architect? All right, and the motion.
I'll make it. Hope I can get it right. So I'll make a motion to approve a condition of Planning Commission's recommendations, also allowing the 5-foot sidewalk and moving the planters into the landscape strip.
Okay, do you
Second.
have a motion and a second? Do you want to also approve the project plan, or did you say that?
Actually, I will add that. Yes, we approve the project plan and elevations.
Okay, very good. Will you change your second as well?
Agreed.
Okay, so a motion by Ben, second by Lena. Any question on that motion? All right, we'll do a roll call. We'll start with Wendell.
Aye.
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 Okay, that carries. Thank you very much for attending, Kristen.
Thank you.
It's a long wait, I'm sure.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys' time. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I was told on item 5 that will be for a later meeting, so I just asked the council to table that.
Move to table.
Second.
Okay, motion by Denny to table and a second by Wendell. Any question on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. All right, so move on to item number 6, which is consider approval of resolution 2020-17R for the Steel Solar Project to cover some power resource we are losing and to approve the Steel Solar Farm Power Supply Agreement presented by Jack. Is he still there in Zoom land?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe just to give you kind of a quick overview. We've talked about this in council briefly, and it kind of came forward quicker than what we thought at UAMPS. And so they've asked us to try to get this approved before December so that they can move forward. And it looks like everybody that's in the project will be able to have that done. So I'm glad we got it on the agenda. First of all, what is the resource? It's a steel solar resource. That'll be 40 megawatts of solar generation. It's a facility that will be located in Box Elder County in northern Utah. And the facility is scheduled to become operational in December of 2022. How are we going to contract it through UAMPS? UAMPS is entering into a power purchase agreement with Steel Solar LLC on behalf of UAMPS member electing to participate in this project. UAMPS is utilizing the master firm supply agreement with a specific transaction schedule for the Steel Solar resource as the agreement with its members participating in this project. The terms of the arrangement for the PPA will be between Steel Solar LLC and UAMPS, which provides delivery of solar energy for 25 years once the project comes online, December 2022. The developer's experience DOE Shaw Renewable Investment has more than 350 megawatts of solar under construction in Utah. So we feel like the contractor's really reputable. We don't see any problems there. What happens if the project doesn't come online as expected? Still Solar LLC will provide development security to protect UAMPS from delays in projecting coming online or the failure of the project to ultimately become operational. The pricing is really competitive. We're looking at $31.45 per megawatt hour. It's comparable with other solar projects the same size. And one of the other benefits of this project is every year through the PPA and a scholarship program will be offered for those people that are participating in this project, up to $10,000 per year for someone in high school that's a senior that's interested in renewable energy. I thought that was pretty cool. If you go back to the resource chart, Brock, I had it there. You had it up there at one time. You can see this chart right now is looking into 23 and 24. You can see that we still need resource. And this right now, this chart's built to for 23, 24 to 3.5% growth rate. So we can use it. We can use it in our portfolio. I think it's a great project because we can use our gas reciprocal engines down at the generation yard to take up the slack when the solar drops off. And I think the solar project's really a reasonable price. So it's my recommendation to council to approve the resolution so that we can move forward on this project. And if you have any questions, I'll take them.
Just one, I see where we're dropping it off in June of 2022 and not picking it up until December. So we've got a lot of peak between June and December. Are we just going to go on to the open market?
Well, we'll go on to the open market, yes, or there's still other options out there for us to look at in the future. One that I'm going to be bringing to council shortly, me and Brock's been working on is possibly putting another generator down at the city yard. With summer costs the way they were this last summer and what's happening, it looks like in the next year or two, we think that that's a great possibility as long as gas prices stay reasonable, that we'd be better off to put a gas unit in and use that for peaking to help us on our high load hours. So there's going to be other resources and other things that will come up. I've got one in front of me right now, but for summer high load hours, they want over $100 a megawatt hour. And I don't feel comfortable with that. And I think the reason it is so high is because of what happened in California. So I'm kind of thinking maybe we ought to sit back and kind of see what happens. Because if it's cooler, those prices aren't going to go that high. And I hate to lock in at $100 and then, have the market change because it's a cooler summer. And then, we're paying $20 or $30 more per megawatt hour than what we would have to.
Thank you. You want a motion? Good.
Yes, I would love a motion.
I move that we approve resolution 2020-17R for the Steel Solar Project.
I second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Denny and a second by Wendell. Any question on that motion? This is a money item. Start with Ben.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
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 Okay, that carries. All right, thank you, Jack, for your work on
Thank you
that.
very much, council.
And I'll get that signed tonight.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item number 7, our quarterly financials presented by Brock. Is this so we meet our audit findings that you're,
No, the audit will be coming.
well, that was a finding that we weren't hearing the financials enough, right?
Yep. Yeah, so we have here just, and since we've been a little while, I'm going to be try to be quick, brief, hit the highlights. So we have the first quarter of fiscal year 2021 financials. If you look on the first page, you have a comparison comparing back to fiscal year 2020's first quarter. You have on there the revenues and the expenditures. As you can see,
Parks and Trails needs to pick it up.
So on the revenue side, you can see compared to last year, last year at this time, we had just under $1.2 million in revenue, and this year we are just under 1.9 million in revenue. A couple of those, as you can see, taxes is up a little bit. Our sales and use tax, franchise taxes are up compared to previous time. Same time last year also, you look down those license and permits, our building permits are up. We had budget 165,000 in building permit fees. We've currently collected 75% of what we had budgeted. Knowing that we budget very conservative going through the budget, it was going through right there, kind of the early parts of COVID and not sure where we were going to be. So our revenues are definitely exceeding our budget. What we weren't sure, but what we did budget. So, and this in those numbers there there's no CARES funds inside that revenue there. So they're allocated or accounted for in another fund. So. Some of the things that are in there right now that you will be seeing a decrease has our wildland fire. Everything we received to date is accounted for in there. We, at the end of the season, which just ended, we'll wait till all of our revenue, all the stuff comes in, and then we will cut a check to Ivans for their portion of that revenue. So right now, that one is showing a little high because we will be splitting that revenue with them 50-50. So knowing that, and that's under the charges for services. One of the items that is down, I'd say, compared to previous years is the fines and forfeitures, fines from the court. Court's been slow, just how the courts handle things, also the police with the number of tickets, the citations that are being issued is less, and so that one is a little bit slower at this time. Any questions in regards to the revenue? On a couple of those taxes too, you have it at the end. I believe there's the graph shows there's a bar graph that shows how the sales tax, wrap tax, local option. It's what should be in there, I believe so. But on the expenditure side, we have this current year, our expenditures are 1.6 million compared to the same time last year, 1.4 million. The court is doing a good job. They have not exceeded. Administration is up. We've purchased some equipment, things dealing with new server, things to help with transitioning to new accounting software, helping to handle more video conferencing, virtual meetings. Our data processing with our IT, we've expensed over 50% of that one already, just in them working to help get new computers and everything up and running, handling all the things we're trying to do the virtual meetings. And well, that one's up higher than previous years in the administration. Also, in our solid waste disposal contract is about $29,000 high compared to the previous year. There's just a timing issue on when payments. There's 4 payments in that got accounted for in this quarter instead of just 3. So public safety. Chief Flowers in here, but it is up based on their budget that they have for this year. And in this first quarter, we make a payment based on the end of the previous fiscal year. We do a true up to what the last quarter would be. So it's a little bit, could be higher, could be less, depending on where the expenses come in at their end of their fiscal year. So fire and EMS, both are not doing too bad. We also have within the fire, we roughly have an extra employee at the current time with one employee who's been out on medical leave. We brought in one of the part-time volunteers, the full-time status to continue to have coverage, fill our shifts. So, and that employee hopefully will be coming back sometime the first of the year. So that's why wages are up a little bit in the fire EMS side. Also, we had in the fire with our wildland, we had a fair amount of repairs. Some of our equipment is aging, and so we had a fair amount of repairs this year in the wildland. Also, with our staff, there's been a little bit more overtime than usual. We also this year had lease payments. We bought new heart monitors, so which is what in our lease payments there. They're slightly ahead. Fire is relatively close, but the EMS is about $54,000 more than previous time. Building department as well is up. Legal services is the one that kind of gets Corey each year, depending on how much legal services. Matt's not here to defend his bills, but as it shows, we expended in legal services 88% of what we had budgeted already this year. So Public Works as well. Some of this comes a little bit of timing on when things are purchased. They've started their crack seal. They purchased their amount of crack seal. We paid one of our bonds early on. So wages and benefits are all right in line with about where they should be. So. Parks, as said, Parks is down. Some of that has to do with what we did last year, some of the projects that were done. So last year, so we're down back to actually probably a little closer to normal. Sports field as well. Knowing that we will probably bring back sometime in the first of the year, bring back for a budget amendment for some of the project and equipment that we put off through for COVID. We're looking at the budget and maybe we'll bring those back for some stuff, and some of those with Brad has a few pieces of equipment he would like to purchase. So Swiss days, you can see Swiss days all we did was the fireworks. We didn't do anything, so that expenditure is way down. And economic development. To date, we have our memberships, League of Cities, and also our RAP tax donations is what we've done so far this year with economic development. So, which leaves us through the first quarter in the general fund of revenues over expenditures of $253,000. Any questions? General fund?
I don't have a question, but on the the things you're going to bring back that we pulled out of the budget, would it help to discuss those in a work meeting? Or we have a little,
Yeah, we'll bring them back and have a discussion, because then we're gonna have to have a public hearing to do that. So we'll bring them back once I've met with each of the department heads and getting what they want, and then we can bring it back and say, here's the items of what they would like. And we can discuss that, go through that, and get council's feelings on that, and then we'll have a public hearing and amend the budget, so. If not, I'll jump just quickly to our CARES fund. We applied for all 3 tranches of the CARES funds, which gave us roughly $688,000. To date, with what we're expecting is about $190,000 what we have spent. We still have approximately $160,000 in our small business grants still working to award. We have some other options, some ideas we're going to do to continue to spend that money. The idea is to spend all $688,000. So the state's policy is you have to have it spent by November 30th. Federal policy is December 30th. But the state wants, if you haven't spent it, they want it back, and they'll allocate it to others who need more. So if we don't have it spent by the 30th, but we're going to spend it, which is what our plan is, because our small business grant is, we extended it to November 30th. You have to write up a detailed plan of how you're going to spend those funds. So we'll put that together, because our plan is to spend all the funds that we've received. So that's an update on our CARES funds. Impact fees. We haven't had much going on in impact fees except for on the revenue side. It's all ahead of our budgeted revenue, which coincides also with our building permit fees that are up. We've collected in streets 66% of budget, parks 76%, and public safety 45% of budget. Parks has worked on one project, so 361,000. Into the enterprise funds for business type activities. Start with the water fund. The water fund. We have operating revenue of 707,000 and non-operating revenue of 93,000 for total revenue of 801. Just so you know, the non-operating revenue is interest and impact fees, and if there's any fund balance to be appropriated. Majority, all of that 93,000 is 91,000 of that is impact fees, and then impact fee interest. So,
Brock, do you have that on your screen?
I could jump to it.
We can't see it here. Thank you.
Thank you for reminding me. So on the revenue side, you can see in the graph down here compared to last year, 2020 to 2021, relatively close. Revenue, same ball picture. We've received 36% in meter of budget and metered water sales. Connection fees with growth, 61%. Also our hydrant meter use, which is a small amount, but it's 70% of collected, all dealing with growth. Expenditures wise, they've expensed 22%. Okay, some of that is a timing issue, depending on when we pay bonds. And also we have one big project in here is with the meters that we're completing with Heaton and doing the new AMI metering. Some of the big costs in here is dealing with the Snow Canyon compact. Roughly 59,000. We do also, if you see line item 918 there, it's transfer to public services shops. That's for expenses incurred in the general fund. The general fund pays for that benefits those funds, and so they have an allocated percentage that we transfer each year. As this year, it's 106,000, so we transfer roughly $26,000 each quarter. But we haven't paid any of our bond payments yet. Those haven't come due. We have roughly $358,000 in principal and $77,000 in interest on bonds in the water fund. But overall, revenue exceeded expenditures by $303,000. Sewer fund.
Is that deficit on the sewer fund to reflect the new meters? Is that what that is?
The debt.
The deficit, 22,394 over last year.
Which fund are you in? Oh, you're in
Sewer
sewer.
fund.
No, sewer didn't have with the meters. The meters were water and power. So
So we just made a payment to the city of St. George or something?
we have a lease payment that comes out the first of the year on the sewer truck. So we've expensed the 73,000 of that payment. Comes out early. We also do pay to St. George, on a monthly basis to the treatment plant. That's been 30%. So, yeah, I thought I hit page down. So revenue in the sewer fund is at 28%, roughly 200,000, 28% of budget. The expenditures are at 35%. If you look at the detail, most things are pretty close in line. The one that sticks out is also insurance, which is 85%. We pay the insurance usually the first part of the year in July, and also that lease payment. There's things that push it a little bit high early in the year. As I stated, impact fees are above budget at 60%. But for the first quarter, it does leave expenditures exceeded revenue by 22,000. But I expect that to turn as the year goes on. After we've made those early payments, that will turn itself, and we will, as we go forward, the revenue will exceed expenditures. All right. The electric fund. We have operating revenue of just over 2 million and non-operating revenue of 170,000 for a total of 2.2 million. And that put our revenue at roughly 42% of budget. But for our residential sales and commercial sales, both residential sales was actually at 48% of budget and commercial at 42% of budget. It was a warm summer. Definitely a fair amount of power was used. On the expense side, we're at 36% budget. We ran our generators for amount in line item 610, 57,000 or 76% of budget expense there. Also in line item 950, a little bit 930, it's UAMPS power purchases. We expense 66% in purchasing power through UAMPS. As was talked about with Jack a little bit, going into the market and buying power. We also had insurance that we pay at the first of the year, which took up 66% of that budget. But overall, revenue exceeded expenditures by 427,000. We also have not made our bond payments yet on that. And then we've got roughly $400,000 in bond payments in the electric fund. Stormwater. stormwater fund. Operating revenue of 132,000, non-operating of 22,000 for a total of 154,000, roughly 29%. And the expenditures of 79,000 or 24%. What's left revenue over expenditure of 75,000. I don't know on stormwater has definitely been doing much better than previous years. We're definitely got in the right direction after some of our big projects, the detention basin, rebuild of the detention basin, and the hillslide. Things are good. We did have an audit during the first quarter. The state did an audit. Jack can correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't received all of our findings or any recommendations or the recommendations back. For sure on what their recommendations on how our stormwater did, but I think they did a really good job. Scott Bannon is taken over as our stormwater coordinator. So he's spending a lot more time in the stormwater, he's really got things moving in the right direction in the stormwater. So and not much sticks out. The biggest thing in there probably that Peter is our insurance. So we pay that early, which increases the expenditures first part of the year in the stormwater as well. With that and some of the graphs, you can see that the majority of our revenue from the enterprise funds comes from the electric department. Pretty significant portion of it all comes out of the electric department and water. So, and it coincides with the expenditures also. So the majority of our expenditures in the business type activities come out of the electric fund. Another graph comparing how they look, each business type activity compared to each other. Hopefully this is the graph you have in your packet as well, looking at this. Really has it all the way back. The graph only goes back to 2017, but you can see all the way back to 2012 where we were sales tax wise. In 2012, we collected a total of $562,000. And this has 4 months on it, but through the 4 months of this year, we've collected just under $470,000. So definitely there's different
We broke 100,000 six months previous in all those years.
Yeah.
We're over that for the first 4, which will continue.
Yeah, really things have been trended in the right direction. Harmon's has been a big, and the additional commercial that's happening up there is good for us in Santa Clara. You have sales tax, the highway tax as well. You can see compared to 2012, we collected just under 49,000. We've collected through 4 months 62,000. The next graph is the local option, which only just took effect. We don't have a whole lot of data, but you can see through the roughly 6 months, 7 months from fiscal year 20, 53,000, or in 4 months, we've received 39,000.
What is that?
It's the local option, that quarter-cent sales tax that was passed, actually passed years ago, but didn't go into effect in Washington County until roughly last year is when it went into effect. It's one that we get a percentage here. If you had a bus, if you have transit, you got additional amount to do the funding. If you don't, then it ends up with the county to work with the county on the municipal transportation. So.
So this is the option that if we chose to participate in Suntran and added the 2 stops, we would see an increase in the revenue.
Yes, how I understand it, yes. We would get a little bit additional revenue.
All right.
our room tax, transient room tax. Yeah. So you can see, and they're probably about 2016 Paradise Village, Zion. Also, it's some of, I think there is some of people remitting their taxes as well, remitting those taxes to the state on a consistent basis. So, and the last one is our RAP tax, Recreation, Arts, and Parks. Number as you can see, the total each year we've received more. We know, like the decision of the council of that, 80% of that goes to the parks, 20% to the arts. So. With that, that is the first quarter financials for fiscal year 2021. Definitely things looking good for Santa Clara. Staff is, yeah, through the COVID, I will say we're trying to use our CARES Act fund to purchase things that we needed, PPE, and we've done some of the renovations here, but they have also been tried to be as frugal as they can and sure that we are where we are now, that our revenues are over expenditures. But so we'll come back in January to discuss some budget amendments, and hopefully the audit will be in December for your review from fiscal year 20.
Okay, thank you, Brock. Were there any other questions for Brock? On that? Yeah, just excellent work. All right, we'll move on to our item number 8, our Safe Southern Utah Pledge presented by Brock.
All right. So Jared actually brought this in to us following a week or two ago about we are committed to keeping our customers safe, our customers and employees safe. So there's a sign, we have these up, we have them out in front saying that we're Safe Southern Utah, and it has some things in it that ask you to do. About ensuring that employees and people are wearing face masks and other protective equipment. You're observing social distancing, including spacing customers or clients according to state guidelines. Promoting healthy hygiene, including frequent hand washing. Cleaning high-touch surfaces frequently, and checking employees daily for COVID-19 symptoms. So those are things we're doing. People, if we have symptoms, checking people have them, we send them home. We actually have one, not symptoms, but was close contact, found out today, somebody, so he's home. But as you can see, as we do here, we're trying to do everything we can to social distance, keep everybody safe, as I said, keep Southern Utah safe. So that's a pledge that we have taken as staff. So, Jared, if you have anything else you'd like to add?
Oh, just that's put out by the chamber, and the idea is just to stem any potential shutdowns. If businesses will pledge to do this, that should keep businesses safe so that places stay open. So we're a part of that. And then if we do have any businesses in Santa Clara that aren't part of that and we have contact with them, we should probably let them know to look into it. So I left some documentation for Ditzy. If somebody stops in, she could talk to them about it if needed. That's it. Okay, we'll move on to our reports. Let's start with Wendell, since we usually start with Ben.
I did have a meeting.
All right.
Washington County Solid Waste District. And main thing is that we need to sign an ordinance before the end of the year. And I talked to Matt about it. We're supposed to get that signed December 11th. It's basically putting everything together as far as what we're going to be doing with the public, rate wise, and so forth. Recycling and trash pickup. And we all have a opt-out end at the end of this month. So if anybody wants to opt out of the recycling, we have to do it by the end of the month. There are other things going on, but that's important things.
Did they share any information on how many people have opted out?
It looks like there's not going to be enough opt out, that it will affect our rates. Our rates will be the high rate, be the rate, the lowest rate we can get
Nice.
so far. It could change by the end of the month, but look really good.
Okay, very good.
One thing I'd add on the ordinance that we're bringing back, our current ordinance, one of the changes that we're making in that ordinance is currently, if you opted out of the recycling and you say you lived in the valley and you decided to move and you moved to the heights, you would be put in the recycling, even though you had opted out. We're gonna making that change that if you move within Santa Clara, if you're a resident of Santa Clara and you opted out and you just moved to a different house within Santa Clara, that you can remain opted out. So that's really the main change on our side that we're gonna make within that ordinance.
Okay, very good. Denny?
Probably the only thing, I was asked to get with Gary Zabriskie to talk to them about a CIB loan if we decided to pursue a fire station. Gary is willing to sit down with us. Actually, there is loan money. Grant money has been cut off because there's no oil and gas production going on in the state of Utah. So it's a low interest loan. I think right now they're 2.5%. And they will do up to 90 to 95% of the value. We need to put the application together. They will be reviewing those applications between now and June, but we need to have it completely put together where Ivins and Santa Clara is together. They feel like we can do it pretty easy. And Gary would sit down with us and go through the application, whoever is going to be doing that. So I don't know if we've got the money to pay for that, but at least it's an option.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Denny. All right, I do have a fair amount to report, but I'll try to be very quick. Just a quick report on the business grants. Those are going really well. We've been meeting once a week on Tuesday mornings to review those and have been really thorough. I did have one quick question. We have a requirement that the business have a business license with the city as of March 1st. And we've had 2 apply that didn't have a business license. One doesn't have it at all, and one didn't get it until July. So they can prove that they are in Santa Clara, they just didn't get a business license. Do we want to keep that requirement? Or do we want to allow them to prove some other way that they were in business in Santa Clara to give them those funds? Any thoughts on that?
I'm okay as long as they can prove they're doing business in Santa Clara. The business licensing is interesting because we've got 30 licenses on the wall in 3 different counties and cities, the county of Vegas, North Las Vegas, and it's just, you're doing business. It's hard to keep up on all of those. So I don't know where the council would feel on that, but I think if they could show they're doing business, my opinion would be that if they can prove they need it and can show they're doing business here, I'm okay with that.
How much business are they doing? Is it just a little dab of business, or is it?
Well, so I can share. One was Jim's RV, and that was another tricky one because he was in business in St. George in March and started here in July. And didn't apply in St. George for any of their funds, but now applied with us. That's another one I think the committee will have to take a close look at. Because we said they had to be in business as of March 31st in Santa Clara. So there's a little bit of gray area there that we have to suss through. But the reason I ask about the business license is because I also consider maybe we should put a call out for like music teachers. Like I know my wife just had to cancel all of her students and we won't apply, but I could see other teachers wouldn't even think like, I'm not a real business, but if you're filing your taxes as a Schedule C, then you could apply. We don't think any of them have business licenses. They don't consider themselves a business. So any opposition to re-looking at that? Okay. I think before we actually do that, we probably have to come back to the council and officially change it. But I just want to get a feel for it so the council can so the group can tell these businesses which way we're going. So
RV sales are up like 400% nationwide. So I'm just saying, in the last article I read.
that's true. And then Brock did mention we're looking at other ways to spend that CARES Act funding. The current plan is we'll spend as much as we can to help businesses. We'll have one other program that I want to present to you, and then probably to supply the rest to payroll for our frontline workers to spend it all. But we do probably have at least $100,000 we need to spend on something else. And so one idea I want to just pass by you, again, we would suss this out more. I just want to kind of just do a straw poll, is we would send out a letter to all of our businesses. If they want to be a part of this program, we would purchase gift cards from that business in probably like $25 increments and then mail them out to our residents. So the idea would be like Lammy's, like Harmon's, like the fruit stand, if they want. Just any business could opt into that, and we would spend between $1,000 and $5,000 with that business to get through $100,000. So kind of be a Christmas present from the city to all the residents. But that would allow us to spend the money before the deadline and help our businesses, help the residents, help the city look good. Any input on that?
Questions?
Yes.
Is it allowed by the regulation? Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
there have been other municipalities that have gone this route.
Okay.
Is there nothing else? Oh, sorry.
And then the other question would be, we would only be doing retail business outlets that have a retail presence in our city?
That again, I would want input on. So
And then would it go to all households within the city, or are you picking and choosing who would receive that?
I think it would go to every household.
Send something to every household.
Yeah. So it could even be someone that isn't even living here right now, but they get it when they come back or something like that. So Draper did something a little bit different. They sent out like basically paper gift certificates to businesses, and the businesses turn those back in and get reimbursed. But I don't think we have time to do that program before we have to spend the money. So I'd rather just buy the gift cards and hand them out.
Is there any other options we got to use the money? I'm asking just, I mean, inside the city, is there other things we can do? Obviously, the city has other
Well,
needs.
If you're going to go on the line of, I mean, we're trying to spend what I feel is okay. The avenue, if we want to go line of stuff that we can spend, we can go to the fire and EMS and safety things. There's a line of stuff that we could spend money on for them.
I mean, could we use it for payroll for fire and EMS?
No, we can, and that's where
And then
that's where we kind of said what we have.
reallocate the payroll.
Yeah, and that's where mine is. As I told Jared, I said, let's spend what we can with what we can, and then if we are left, then let's do it for the wages and benefits of our frontline workers, but trying to get as much as we can out to help businesses, help residents. So,
And I only say that is we do have other needs in fire and EMS, structurally, building, things like that. So if we can, if legally we can use that to allocate to payroll for the city, and then allocate that to the needs we've got, allocate those within our budget to, I don't know. I don't know.
But the 100,000 is net of those allocations already, right?
Yeah. So what Brock is looking at is that was probably like 200 and something thousand we could apply towards payroll, right? I remember there's still like 100, 150 left we need to spend on or something.
Well,
you couldn't use it for additional payroll.
our payroll, what I just took when I did that one number was just short period. By the time, we'll probably have two, and I just did wages. And if you get all the benefits in there, we probably can spend 300,000.
And you'll understand why I ask when I get to my report. So keep that in mind. So.
Okay, so just straw poll. Do you want the staff to bring something back to you on that? Is it interesting? Is it not?
For me, I'd rather see if we can use it somewhere else in the city. That's my opinion. But if I guess if there's nothing else to go to, trying to keep funds local, but I'd personally rather see it used somewhere else in help the city.
And I'm not opposed to having staff review it and determine the best way and let them proceed with that direction.
Okay.
And I would say if that is something we're interested in, that it really needs to be local retailers. Because otherwise it's not, I mean, and I guess I say that kind of tongue in cheek. I mean, we have landscaping companies that are in the city, right? I don't think giving a gift certificate to a landscaping company is very beneficial. You give the gift certificate to Dutchman's, to Harmon's, to Capriotti's. I think it ought to be a retail establishment, and then that gets our citizens into those businesses within the community. My opinion.
All right. Well, we'll see what staff comes up with on that then. Just a couple more quick things. I did meet with Brad and Brooke when we went before the tourism board to ask for funds for the parking lots at Canyon View. And we were able to get their approval for $160,000. And so that'll now go before the county commission. We had asked for 352, I think. So we didn't get everything we asked. It was a bit of a rough meeting because they are spending a lot of money on the new county building. They have a wing, basically, it's part of that building, and all their extra money is going to that next year. So they kind of eked that out for us. So we were glad for that. And Brad feels like we can do the top 2 parking lots with those funds. We'll have to save probably the lower as another phase later on.
That's awesome.
We're excited for that.
Get the lower.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
And then I did attend a conference call with Terry Draper and Mitch Cloward and Patrick Carroll over at the hospital and some other community members. And things actually are pretty dire there at the hospital. I asked like if there was a car accident with a couple families, what would happen? And Dr. Carroll said actually that did happen recently. There were 7 coming in and we didn't have 7 beds in the ICU available. And so we were making contingency plans for basically creating an ICU room real quick for that. And he said it ended up working out because not everyone needed the ICU, but it is pretty rough there. So they just asked that we use our spheres of influence to encourage everyone to follow the governor's mandate. And then one other really interesting thing that I'll share is he had a heat map of positive cases by age group. And what we've heard is very true that like the college kids are the ones that are most infected. But then you could see really clearly how that spreads to all the other age groups over time. So it started in that age group during the summer when school started up again. And now it's just all the other groups are getting more and more cases from that one group. So anyways, just need to be careful. And that is everything I have to report. You're up, Lena.
Okay, I will be as brief as I can. We had heritage meeting that was fairly well reported on in Bob's presentation. I should say they are really supportive of having commercial businesses come to the historic district. They want to see that and know that our downtown historic district is changing. So just FYI. And then I did have LPC this week, and there were a couple of things that are on the horizon with the legislature that we just maybe ought to be aware of. So if you're talking to Lowry or Don or whoever you're talking to, one is in reference to housing. There's a couple of bills that are on the docket actually. One is an ADU bill, and it's if we have in our ordinance that we have an internal ADU, meaning it's attached. Now, I know we allow detached now, but if it's attached, the state is looking to modify the building codes to make it easier for the use of that ADU so that it doesn't have to have some of the structural things that in some sense, which I think would be beneficial if it's attached. The concern is that it's difficult to enforce some of that stuff if it's owner occupied initially. What happens when it turns to a rental and then it's no longer owner occupied and it turns into like an Airbnb? So anyways, that's on the docket. The other is the Land Use Task Force. And they have a couple of things that are on their docket. One is the Planning Commission. They are looking to have mandatory training for planning commissioners as part of state law. They would potentially require an hour of LUDMA training and 3 hours of other coursework, either put on by the league or by city staff, and that would be an annual requirement. They feel it would be helpful to have more educated planning commissioners. Couldn't agree more. And then the other one is they're looking to come up with some standards for modifying conditional use permits to make the verbiage a little bit better. And then one that I don't know that we deal with much, but given the annexation issues they had up north, Wasatch Back in particular, they're looking to modify the annexation ordinances. So just FYI. And then the last one, and this is specific to fees related to this, what the fees that the cities and towns charge. And I don't know if you participated in this, Brock, but I guess the state auditor is going from education. He started with education and did an audit to determine if the fees that secondary education schools, so colleges and universities, were assessing were reasonable and that the students were receiving direct benefit. And he determined that that was not the case. So for example, and I don't know which university it was, but a university was having a mandatory fee assessed to all students for study abroad programs. The problem is only a very few number of students actually benefit from the study abroad program. So the question was, well, why are all your students paying for it rather than the students that it's not a reasonable fee to have every student pay? So the state auditor now is now going to come to cities and towns. And part of that is because of what he found with the state education system, but also because of what went on in
Pleasant Grove?
Pleasant Grove with the collection of their fee. And so he said, just be aware, this is likely coming down. So you'll want to make sure that as you look at your fees in your town, that there is a reasonableness to them and there is a benefit for the person that's paying the fee. So just FYI. And I think they're still working on their Loveless and Lead public safety program. Last week, there were 73 bill files opened. Chief left, but there were 73 bill files opened related to law enforcement and criminal justice reform. So I think that'll be a big one this year. The areas that were included in those bills were citizen review board mandates, the use of lethal force, eliminating qualified immunity, training, more training, and communication between agencies. So if you get a chance to talk to your legislators, let them know what the city would really like to have happen with some of those things. And that is my report.
Okay, thank you, Lena. You're up, Ben.
All right. We had flood control yesterday. We approved next year's budget, made a minor modification amendment to this year's budget, but all's well. Lots of projects, and it's we're on the docket for Lower Santa Clara from what they just did. Now coming down along Benelli and dredging that and shaping all that. So good things happening there. Met today with Chief Hansey and Brock talking fire stations, and just wanted to get a pulse on the from the council on the direction we want to go. In visiting, our feeling is we put the bare minimum into racial, get it up, you know, what we need. It needs a it needs a facelift, needs the approach taken care of, needs $75,000 to $100,000 worth of work to bring it up, but put the monies we would do in expanding up there into a downtown fire station. In my view, I would put it on the old City Hall property. We own the property. We've got great access front and back. It's in the historical district.
It
I
will
think
help, it helps with the CIB too, for us to have money in the kitty, and that's a big factor that we don't have to pay for. The property.
We've got, I believe, about 2.8 to 3 million bucks allotted in, we don't have that money, but allotted in our impact fee study. Thank you. In our impact fees, we have about 400,000 now. By the time, this would really take probably anywhere from 2 to 3 years by the time you go to design to build. I think architecturally, you could do something similar to the office here, the City Hall, just something. I just think it'd be personally, and I think as a group, I believe that's where we need to put our efforts. I think we're going to need another fire station downtown. I just wanted to get, Chief Hansen needs some direction, obviously. I just wanted to get the council's pulse on what you guys think on where we should. I mean, we do have room on Rachel to expand, but
I did speak with Gary about that specific location, and he made mention that the property, the value of the property being put in by the city would also increase the chances of a grant possibility with the CIB. And so, anyway, that's.
The downtown station would be built for, in my opinion, you'd have the bays. I mean, right now, we've got storage up on Circle. We've got storage in Kayenta. Basically, we're paying, I mean, yeah, we lose a little rental income from Clover Patch that's there, but we're also paying Kayenta about 60% of that anyway. We could get all our equipment in. So it just, it would have living quarters. That's where their living quarters would be. And then, you know, as the city grows, if we do need to expand on Rachel 10, 12, 15 years down the road, that's still an option. But we need a station downtown. And I hate to put $1 to $2 million into Rachel and then knowing that 5 to 7 years down the road, we need a station anyway. So we need to give Chief some direction. And I just wanted to get council's thoughts on that, if you had an opinion one way or the other.
So would that be kind of the new nexus? That was kind of the plan for Rachel, right? It was kind of central, so we could serve both cities really well. Is that also in a spot that we could claim that? You want to use the mic?
Yeah.
That's kind of our deal. We're supposed to provide that nexus, right?
Yeah, so that would give us great location just down where we can get on Santa Clara Drive, go out Highway 91, reach anywhere in Ivins, Kayenta, anywhere down here in the Santa Clara Valley, obviously would be a good spot. And that would be the headquarters station. We realize that this is our one shot to do it right and to, put the money into either Rachel or to a new station that's going to work for future use too.
Okay. And I think Rachel will still be that state, a station we've got, but it's got the room there. But the other thing I think we need to do as a council, as a city, we need to go to I think we need to press hard on the county for funds. We service all the way to the state line. We serve all the way into Gunlock. And I think we need to go and press for some reimbursement in that. I mean, this station will literally be any accident between here and Nevada, they're going to go out of this station. Any medical needs, all the way to Mataqua, they're going out of this station. And I really think we would be entitled to some reimbursement from somewhere in the county for what they're doing, and I'm not sure the best way to go about it. Danny, you may know better, probably better than anybody, but I do think is that number 50, I think we could show on the trips, but I think we need to plan in the near future to go and request some type of agreement, reimbursement that just says, look, we're covering this now.
Right now might be the best time because they're looking at doing a realignment with Gunlock and Vale and
Yeah,
Pine Valley and Central, Dameron Valley. Those are all separate fire districts. And they're talking about doing some combinations of putting them together and to give us some funding to help with what we're taking care of or to pass that duty on to somebody else.
And like I said, really think the stars are aligned to go say, look, it's, we can get a very low interest loan. There's some other fundings out there. I think that's.
Well, in the county, you never know, but your 5-county association also has a fund that they can help. Of course, it's usually with new businesses, so it wouldn't help with that. I think your county commissioners right now would be susceptible to listening.
I might give Commissioner Iverson a call. I was in a meeting yesterday with them and should have, so I'll start that conversation, but is the council okay if we pursue that direction and start, instead of major overhaul on Rachel, go with bare minimum and start moving the direction into downtown station?
And we did exhaust, like looking at other sites. That was the direction last time, right? To go look at any other possible sites.
There are some other sites, but we just felt like this is one that the city already owns. It's a really good location as far as access from Vineyard and Santa Clara Drive. Some of the others weren't quite as accessible, or we'd have to purchase property to meet the needs for a fire station.
I think that's the biggest thing is you're going to go, if you're talking $3 million, but in the price of land right now to go buy, we could be spending $500,000 just to get a half acre to 3/4 of an acre. And so when we have it, that's the thing.
And it's in our historical, it really would be a great presence for the city as well. Not only do it serves so many things. It's, the other thing I was saying is you could have an emergency light out there when they've got to get the trucks out, which actually might break up the traffic flow. So,
Yeah, we'd have to have some kind of a stoplight.
you're going to have
out.
something emergency when you pull out, and I think that would be okay. I really think in driving around, we'd have a little demolition, but other sites are going to require that. And it's good soils, good location, good access, and the land's paid for.
What about the dog park that's there? That's there, right? We talked
That
about
eyeball probably have to be relocated.
Danny.
Danny, are you still on? You still good? We will find a great spot for them. So.
Yeah, that's not a problem. I sleep in the doghouse anyway.
All right, Chief, I think that's the direction we'll move and try to at least get some more information now.
Good, thank you for your
Can
help.
I ask a question about the assignment? Are we given an assignment to go to Gunlock, to go to Mataqua, to go to, who
It's-
decides that?
It's part of our state licensure from this Bureau of EMS that you can't leave an area without an emergency service. So if they call 911, we're the closest transport EMS agency.
So by default, we're designated that.
Yes, and
Wow.
the only revenue we get is what we can bill on an ambulance transport. At every 911 call that requires EMS services, we have to respond to. Sometimes we go out, do first aid, and they refuse transport, or they don't need an ambulance ride, but we still have to, respond to that. So we don't get reimbursed from the county for going there. It's part of our license to do that.
This actually was in the discussion last year at the legislature. And it came from more, I think, it was up in Cache Valley with like Logan and North Logan and that, because I believe it was Logan City provides EMS, but they're mandated to cover North Logan. And they were saying, well, North Logan residents don't pay a dime of their taxes go, but we have to have enough people on staff to be able to cover North Logan. So there was a big discussion about that's just wrong, that you're mandating us to cover something their residents don't pay. Which is kind of what we're talking about with us, that you're just mandated. And so the discussion last year came, it didn't end up going anywhere, but was that something like a county or North Logan, if you don't have it, you go and contract with somebody to provide that service for you, which would mean then the county here would have their option. They could contract with us, Gold Cross, whoever they feel like could provide that service for them. So I don't know. I could see that coming back again in the legislature again this year, but it was discussed this last year.
And I think our argument is the gorge shuts down quite frequently. We become I-15 very often. And there has to be.
See, and I think there's two things. I think the county, the state, and federal highways. The maintenance of Pioneer Parkway and Highway 91, because we try and direct things onto Pioneer Parkway during those times, that we should be getting federal highway funds to maintain Pioneer Parkway. And Old 91, which the county owns all the way to the state line, they maintain, but we need to get, and I think they do get a little money from the federal highways for that. But on the EMS side, it's like Cedar, Iron County, the Cedar Ambulance Service goes all the way to Burl and Modena. And so they get any call in Cedar, you're an hour and a half out of getting there, but they are mandated that they have to service that area the same as we do to Mataqua.
And the Cedar residents are paying for it when the people in Berlin, Modena aren't doing anything.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
I agree. We have a fire station there in Burl Junction. I know.
So do we want to
Really
make
new.
an assignment? You want to visit with Victor? And
I think I need to call Victor.
I
And
think I'll call Don Ipson and see what we can do with the state legislature.
yeah, let's do that. But I think, again, just thinking of other ways to help pay for it, but I think all those are justified. Those are costs that we're incurring as a city that certainly,
Well, and our residents are incurring.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
they haven't, if they found out, I don't know that they know that. I think if they found out that they were paying for that.
Well,
for
one
people,
of
they
the
might be like,
things that
"What?"
happens is like you were talking about, EMS, we can get reimbursed if we transport, but it comes out of the person's pocket that we transport. And so it's not always collectible.
Sure.
And
so that-
oftentimes, any car wreck out on Highway 91 between here and the state line, oftentimes those are people from out of state traveling. They're not residents from Santa Clara or Ivins, but we still have to provide EMS services. They may go by life flight, they may go by ambulance. Sometimes they don't. And the only way that we get reimbursed back is if we can bill for a transport on the ambulance on those type of things. So even fires out there, we respond as first response. It's not our area, but we're the closest. We do mutual aid for the county, and so that's how we're involved with that.
Just turn it all to the BLM, say you're the closest. You
Yeah. It's their responsibility. So we're,
You talk to Don, Denny, I'll talk to Lowry.
So you got Lowry, you're
I'll
gonna
talk
talk
to
to Don,
Lowry.
he's gonna talk to Victor.
Yeah. We'll get off.
All right, we got them all. Okay, that's all I had. That's it. So,
Okay.
Good work.
Good. So when we be done by 9, it is 9 o'clock.
Yes. Good work.
But just stop real quick. Is there anything super pressing? Okay, I just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Ben. Second by Denny. All in favor, say aye.